The warning signs were present from the very beginning. Donkey Kong for the arcade featured Mario's first appearance, but even in those early days, something was off.
And let's have MatPat himself explain why this whole section on Donkey Kong and DK Jr. is wrong.
Laying everything out across Cranky's lifespan makes one thing abundantly clear. Jumpman, the Mario we see in Donkey Kong and Donkey Kong Jr., is not the same person as the Mario we see in the Super Mario series. The sexual maturity of Cranky Kong proves that it can't be the case.
So I pose a question for you, the prosecution, aka MatPat. If this is actually Mario's father doing this to DK and DK Jr., then how does this translate to Mario being a psychopath? And the sins of the father do not translate to the sins of the son. Oh, and this will bite another chunk out of MatPat's theory later. So, since this is in Mario,
Mario is an equal opportunity animal abuser.
that is slander and you know it! Or is it libel since it's a video? Damn legalese!
He also hates insects. Take for instance Wigglers, innocent, happy caterpillars that, across the Mario franchise, show absolutely zero intentions of ever hurting Mario. He ruins their home not once, but twice in both Super Mario 64 and Super Mario Sunshine. Then, after trashing their homes, he proceeds to jump on them, crushing them to death. An innocent creature who did nothing wrong but get upset when his home was violated.
Thanks for cherry picking there, MatPat. Allow me to debunk you. First, in Super Mario Sunshine, the reason why he had to remove the Wiggler from that tower was because it was messing with the device that was made for an egg for the legendary and near extinct, I might add, creature known as the Sandbird. Think of it like a makeshift incubator for a regular egg. Mario had to remove the Wiggler from the device in order for the Sandbird to keep warm. So, you know, the legendary creature wouldn't die. As for the Super Mario 64 example, Mario only attacked the Wiggler because he had a power star. Also, he didn't kill the Wiggler. He only hurt him to the point where the Wiggler would give him the star. And, by the by, the Wiggler was being antagonized by the star itself.
That's not even mentioning creatures like Cheep Cheeps, fish who are just swimming around peacefully.
Yet these innocent fish will easily kill Mario in 2 to 3 hits, depending on what power-ups you have.
Gets you right there. Well, fast forward to adult Mario, hopping once more atop his trusted and loyal friend to save the day and... wait, he just punched him. Look again. Mario punches the Yoshis to get them to extend their tongue. You can even see the Yoshi flinch before it happens. He is physically beating this animal to get it to do what he wants it to do.
You know, for someone who likes to look deeply into things, you have a tendency to miss a real big one when you make this claim. Namely, the art in Super Mario World and Super Mario Galaxy blows this out of the water. And this is official art. Yeah, I don't see Mario hitting the lovable dinosaur, I see him pointing.
Your knowledge of the land shall be great.
And let's not forget that Mario will drop a Yoshi into a pit without hesitation, just to get a couple extra inches out of his jump. A pit that, time and time again, has clearly been shown to result in death.
Player choice. In fact, it's easy for the player to not have to drop Yoshi since there was a flying enemy in that same footage that can be used as another platform. Just because, oh, I don't know. If I'm bad at stealth games, does that automatically make Solid Snake the world's worst infiltrator?
No! 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 I died already! And it's actually within the first 5 minutes of the game! Damn it!
No, it doesn't. If anything, it's just a reflection of the choice of the player.
Luigi doesn't get any thanks at the end of Mario is Missing either. After Luigi's completed this quest, Mario just strolls out and stands there. Stands there. No thank you, no nothing. Just staring at his brother like, I hope you liked the lamest adventure in our franchise, bro. Cause that's the most you're ever going to get.
That's the most selfish, egotistical thing I've ever heard.
Thank you!
This is a weak point. Well, for those who don't know, here's how the ending for the game really goes. There's no thank you, huh? Now, you could see this as a thank you to the player, but people can also interpret this to see that Mario is thanking Luigi. Also, the cheery theme music of the scene also denotes a happy scene. And that stare lasts for maybe 2-3 seconds at the most. You're just reading way too much in that small time span.
And I mean disgusting is Mario's behavior at the end of Mario Power Tennis. Yeah, we're pulling out the real obscure games to get to the heart of this jacket. Does it sound like I'm fired up? Yeah, 'cause I'm fired up. I am angry that I have been deceived by this sleazeball plumber for decades. That I have called him a hero. That I have been his fanboy.
And holy shit! We'll always love you! I can't believe you did this to me, goddammit! How could you do this to me?
Here's why. In Mario Power Tennis, if Luigi wins, this is what happens. He celebrates. For once, this perpetual player 2, this second fiddle gets his chance in the spotlight. People are cheering for him. A stadium full of people are celebrating Luigi. He's holding a trophy, and what does Mario do? The brother who Luigi would love the approval of more than anything else, what does he do? Walks up to him, applauding, laughing, slaps him on the back, and then grinds his shoe into his brother's foot, stands there, and grinds it in.
Each history's greatest monster!
Mario Power Tennis is not actually canon in the Mario timeline. I have 8 cousins who are brothers, and this is pretty much typical behavior. Hell, in Super Mario Bros. 3, Luigi takes a shot at Mario by jumping on him, and even tries to hit Mario with a Koopa shell. And while I'm not going to go through the flanderization of the first part of his video, I want to point out that Mario has actually thanked Luigi in a lot of their journeys. Case in point, the sequel in Luigi's Mansion.
Luigi, you saved Mario. I did it. Way to go. Number 1.
Let's talk for a minute about Mario the Man Whore. Sure, we all know that Princess Peach is Mario's main squeeze now, but it's easy to overlook his flings with other women. Take for instance Pauline. The girl stranded atop the girders in Donkey Kong may appear to have the same fashion sense as the Toadstool Princess, but one look at the promotional box art of our damsel in distress shows us that Pauline is a very different type of gal.
The wrong place at the wrong time.
As you yourself have stated, MatPat.
Jumpman, the Mario we see in Donkey Kong and Donkey Kong Jr. is not the same person as the Mario we see in the Super Mario series. The sexual maturity of Cranky Kong proves that it can't be the case.
Later, in Mini-Land Mayhem, she even gets her own toy modeled after her. There's no Peach toy. Theme park based around his hit toy line. There's no Peach toy.
Screw you, continuity!
Waves of comments about this being either before or after a Peach Mario celebrity breakup. Timelines agree that the MVDK series takes place around the same time as New Super Mario and Super Mario RPG.
This is a big issue I see in a lot of MatPat's videos. He'll make points, but he won't ever make his references known to people. You don't link to any supposed timelines in your description, you just keep promoting yourself down there. And frankly, from all the points I debunked already, I'm not really gonna believe anything you say on face value anymore.
Land for the Game Boy. And yes, while the manual and promotional material may bill this as Mario saving just another princess out of the kindness of his heart, there's no denying what you see in the final scene of the game. "Oh, Daisy, Daisy," he cries out when seeing her. Now, I'm sorry, but that's not how a friend greets another friend. Names only get repeated in romantic settings.
What's wrong? Snake! Snake!
The kingdom was invaded by the Koopa, black magic, there we go.
The quiet, peace-loving mushroom people, aka toads, were turned into mere stones, bricks, and even field horsehair plants, whatever that is, blah-de-blah-de-blah. The only one who can undo the magic is the Princess Toadstool. There you have it. Each and every brick you shatter is someone you were supposed to be saving. And the game takes it one step further, rewarding you for killing them, giving you points for each and every block you smash.
In the official story of Super Mario Bros. By Nintendo, it shows the story of pictures happening near Peach's castle when Bowser turned the toads into brick, meaning that those toads are the only ones that were transformed at that point in the Mushroom Kingdom. The image you see on screen right now shows the story. In the official story, it is said Bowser turned the Toad residents into blocks, but it is shown that he not only does at the castle during the capture of the princess, all the blocks Mario hits are not toads. Blocks are naturally made in the kingdom itself. Although Nintendo never really revealed how it's made naturally, you can see they're not made from the toads when Super Mario Bros. Is beaten and all the toads are set free. This meaning that all the bricks shown in later games are not toads, but rather naturally developed.
Look at his behavior with a Mega Mushroom. Look at his utter lack of concern for anything in his way, knowing full well that each and everything in front of him is an actual resident of the kingdom. He even celebrates his massacre when he finishes.
As I said before, when the player beats the original Super Mario, the toads have returned to normal, and those blocks are naturally formed. Even then, MatPat, you're the one who's making this claim that the blocks are toads, and you're not showing your evidence.
And while we're talking about his murderous tendencies, let's talk for a minute about Mario's preferred method of delivering death: crushing.
Against the creatures that are trying to kill him, and can usually do so in 1 or 2 shots. Also, I'm skipping the history on crushing torture techniques since Mario isn't torturing the creatures like how MatPat is comparing it to.
Did that make you uncomfortable? Make you cringe? Could you see yourself being repulsed by that sort of thing?
Oh, I've been feeling sick and grossed out ever since you started your character assassination.
Good! Because it's normal for someone to react that way.
I can't stop laughing.
He relishes in it, yipping and yee-hawing as he leaps from one flattened corpse to the next. He has no sense of guilt, no sense of remorse.
Oh yeah, it's not like he ever makes those sounds when he jumps. Also, the players can just jump over the monsters and not kill them. That's the player's choice.
I died already!
Or, in some cases, players' lack of skill.
Doesn't have any remorse for their crimes? The Joker, Hannibal Lecter, Mr. Hyde, Ted Bundy, Lumberjack Dexter. These are all men with antisocial personality disorder. Actual psychopaths.
Well, 2 of those characters are fictional, also from the official, and I do mean official, Nintendo Character Guide of 1993. Mario is tolerant. He'll accept anyone or anything at face value. He treats anyone and anything with dignity and respect. He has seen too many things in his travels to be narrow-minded. Also, way to go with the worst characters to compare Mario to.
I can definitively say Mario has antisocial personality disorder. Behind that plastered-on smile, behind that perpetually happy Hitsami is a monster. A man who has proven himself to be a threat to everything and everyone around him. He is no hero. We just haven't stopped to question him until now. Who would have thunk it?
And all it took was cherry-picking, making up false evidence, and reading far too much into little things.
Do the Mario swing your arms.
If you think about it, it makes sense. There was only ever one piece of evidence we really needed to prove Mario's evil intentions. Damn you, blue shells. Let's face it, if my Mario theories have shown us anything, it's that Luigi is probably the best of the bunch.
Well, that and you have a tendency to be really inconsistent with your evidence, your cherry-picking of information, and you straight up lying to your audience at times, but what do I know?
kinda like the guy. You know what? It's long past time that we give Luigi some well-deserved love. And yet, once again, as we've seen time and time again in this franchise, looks may be deceiving. Because in researching the lovable underdog Luigi, one particular appearance of his stood out from the rest. If we're talking about really diving deep to find out what makes Luigi tick, we need to look no further than a game where we get to see all the sides of him. All two sides, that is. Because the most insightful title for talking about Luigi is Super Paper Mario.
Technically, this is a game that's not part of the main universe and has its own history. One of the biggest factors is the fact that the Paper Mario had a crossover game just last December with the Mario and Luigi franchise, perfectly called the Paper Jam. And in fact, it was Luigi who came across the book containing the Paper Mario universe. Hey, that's what the game synopsis says. So right there is a red flag. Yes, it is a form of Luigi, but the Paper Mario franchise has its own canon, meaning the characters could very well have pasts that are different from other Mario games or have different mindset. Hell, Bowser even goes out of his way to help Mario out in this game too. The first step here is that MatPat should have done is to prove that the Luigi we see in this game is the same in the others. That'd actually be a proper way to describe a long-term loved character.
Even if you did play Super Paper Mario, here's what you need to know. The big baddies for this game aren't Bowser and Peach, it's Count Black. Not Jontron Black. Black. And his, like, totally angsty counterculture business associate, Nastasia.
Okay, I may have skipped it, but this is the second time you brought up another big YouTuber. Why? Did you feel the need to put more into the search engine so people would come across your video and channel? Pointless rambling aside, the joke overstays its welcome. I get that humor is subjective, but when you keep throwing the same joke at the audience so quickly in a span of 5 seconds, it comes off as trying too hard.
At an early point in our story, Luigi finds himself to be the first responder on the scene of Count Black's castle, where he gets duped by 2 Goombas who lead him straight to Nastasia. What happens next is why this game will end up being important for Luigi. Nastasia uses her hypnotic laser eyes to instantly hypnotize him, turning him into the evil Mr. L. Mr. L, an arrogant villain with an attraction to Peach and a jealousy of Mario's jumping abilities. He fights viciously against Mario and the gang in multiple forms across the entirety of the game, up to and including the final boss.
I would like to point out that the final boss of the game, while is Luigi becoming Mr. L's final form, it wasn't due to Nastasia's power. It was actually due to an item called the Floro Sprout, which can be used to control the minds of those who got them planted into them, which includes Luigi and transforms him into the final boss. Just wanted to put that out there, since by the way MatPat makes it sound, it makes it feel as though Nastasia was the one who caused the final transformation, which is not the case.
He's violent, he's aggressive, and he is out for blood. And if you're upset that I didn't put spoiler tags before revealing that this guy is Luigi, well then, I just have no words for you. No words, I say!
You just spoiled the final boss of the game, as well as a rather prominent plot twist as well. So well done. So not only did you just ruin a game for the people who didn't have a chance to play it yet, but you just spat in the faces of those who could potentially get mad at you for doing something and assumed that they were getting mad for a singular reason.
Now, to understand why this is important for Luigi, we have to talk about hypnosis. In all the official game wikis, Nastasia is referred to as having instantaneous hypnotic.
While it does say hypnotic powers, it also says she brainwashes them. It says it in your own video.
Powers, and Luigi is referred to as being hypnotized. In game though, Nastasia refers to her powers as both hypnosis and as brainwashing. So, which is it?
Okay, for once, I actually did a little legwork for MatPat. I know, shock of all shocks! And found the script that MatPat is using. It's from GameFAQs. Not really the most reliable source for scripts, mind you, but hey, it was the best I could find. I bring this up because Nastasia's powers are referred to as brainwashing in game text, and not action since that can be left up to interpretation, up to 6 times, while hypnosis was only mentioned twice. And even then, one of those 2 times was referred to as hypno powers. Personally, I side with the more prominent, more used term here, since in the media such as video games, comics, and movies, the 2 tend to be used in a much more flanderized state and can often be interchangeable at times, which is common practice in media.
As I mentioned, Nastasia herself says that her power is hypnosis. But what does that actually mean? Personally, I always thought that hypnosis was just a magic trick. There are plenty of people out there, though, who practice hypnosis as a profession, and they'll tell you a much different story. According to statistics from the Society of Clinical Hypnosis, hypnosis is a state of selective, focused attention, and about 85% of people can achieve some kind of hypnotic state. But still, this is all just a bunch of malarkey, right? Well, no. Last month, I went to a YouTube event in New York where Jacksepticeye and I happened to win a taco challenge judged by the world-renowned chef, Rachel Ray. Sorry, I had no other opportunity to really brag about that, so I figured I'd shove it in here.
Look, as much as I am a fan of Jacksepticeye, could ya please get on with your case? Seriously, that's not a joke. It's just another portion of you bragging about rubbing elbows with famous people, and it makes it a chore for people to watch your video as they don't care. Seriously, you keep bragging about yourself in each of your videos as of late, and it's getting annoying and it makes it hard for people to watch your videos as a chore.
But more to the point, at this event we got to see a real hypnosis demonstration done on YouTubers who I know and am personal friends with. And let me tell you, these guys weren't acting. And of course, because it happened to YouTubers, duh, it's all over YouTube. Afterward, you could see in Joey Graceffa's vlog that he felt awake and aware during the whole experience.
Like in the moment, like my mind was like, oh, you can do this, like this is what you're supposed to do.
Looking at my own personal experience watching the show, it seems pretty clear that the hypnosis happened pretty fast, as quickly as you saw in the video. It's just a matter of finding people whose minds are open to accept the power of suggestion. And look at Luigi, he's a textbook candidate. He's used to taking direction from everyone. He's been controlled by people all his life. He's already used to taking action based on what's suggested to him. This is also definitely the closest thing we see to Nastasia's powers in Super Paper Mario. She's described as having instantaneous hypnotic powers, which is a little faster than what happened at the YouTube event, but frankly, not by all that much.
What the YouTubers went through is a form of hypnosis known as deep hypnosis. Under the effects of deep hypnosis, those subjected to it can move about, open their eyes, and in some cases undergo medical procedures without any additional anesthetic. And there isn't a real clear reason for this. Researchers in the field have contended that there is a factor in hypnosis, and that is the subject's willingness to be hypnotized. Simply put, you can't be hypnotized if you don't want to be hypnotized. Now granted, in my research I did find a few claims of being able to hypnotize people unwillingly, but the settings for how that worked were much different than how it was in the game and in the YouTuber's case. Environment can have an effect on these sorts of things. Creating a setting where the subjects of hypnosis will be more willing to believe the hypnosis will work is a key to successful hypnosis. Let's go back to the YouTubers that MatPat brought up. Considering that they're public figures with practically millions of people following them, if they were to be showing much more negative stance towards the hypnotist, then that would look bad for them online. Now don't take this to mean I'm saying that they were faking it. But what I am saying is that they are more mentally willing to open themselves to a mental manipulation, since there was an expectation for them to do so. Now let's look at the game, and considering that Luigi is being frantic, surrounded by enemies, and he's actively opposing the supposed hypnosis. That would have a much more drastic impact on the supposed forced hypnosis. One of the myths that a lot of scientists have explained is that people who act silly or respond to instructions to do foolish things to do so is because they want to. Once again, the subject has to be willing to cooperate. In addition, there's a good consensus that it's impossible for anyone to be implanted with suggestions that go against their will. There's a lot more, but I've gone long enough and I'll leave a link to the description for my sources. A lot more than what MatPat does. Again. My point, hypnosis only works on those who want to be hypnotized. So, MatPat, you can't say...
Okay, great, so Luigi is hypnotized.
You haven't proven he was hypnotized.
That explains what happens to him and why he becomes the evil Mr. L, right? Actually, no. It turns out that Luigi's behavior can't be explained away by hypnosis.
Then what the hell was the point of the last 8 minutes of your video? You just wasted so much time, you lousy...
Actually, no. It turns out that Luigi's behavior can't be explained away by hypnosis. Listen to this clip from the beginning of my YouTuber Hypno Sesh.
Stand straight ahead just for a moment. I'll count to 3, but not before. When I do reach 3, all you have to do is just close your eyes. That's all I'm going to ask you to do. 1, 2, and 3. Close your eyes. Good. Open them back up. There you go. There's no motion, push, magic, pixie dust, Harry Potter's not going to run on stage with a magic wand. There is no feeling of hypnosis. All hypnosis feels like is what you imagine it to.
In my research, one of the most common questions that hypnotherapists get is, will I be forced to do things that I don't want to do? And the answer that they always give is no. That even if the hypnotherapist wanted to make the patient do something that they wouldn't otherwise do, they wouldn't be able to. Quote, if you hypnotize someone, they'll not do anything against their morals. And here's another quote. No, there's no loss of control. Hypnosis allows clients to be more focused and actually achieve more, not less control. What does that mean for Mr. L and Luigi? Well, considering Luigi has been hypnotized and that those under hypnosis won't break their moral codes, that only leaves one possibility. That Luigi isn't acting against his own will in Super Paper Mario when he becomes Mr. L. When Nastasia hypnotizes him, his morals aren't changing.
No. Just no. This whole video is hinging on Nastasia's ability being that of hypnosis. completely ignoring the fact that it could be just brainwashing that's used in a more fantastical sense, which, considering there's a plant in the game, the Floro Sprout, which can actually make both Mario and Luigi get a game over because it brainwashes them into a pair of lackeys for Dementio, and the fact there was an entire race of people, Kragnons, that were brainwashed into slavery, brainwashing is a very good possibility here. And the same was done for Bowser's minions, who are forced against their will to serve Bleck. And in fact, we see the effect being done to a Koopa, shown here. There's obviously something more here than just hypnotism. There's a magical or even a psychic force that's affecting their mental capabilities, especially if it's creating new clothes for the characters affected by the ability. So it isn't hypnosis. It's only hypnosis used in a fantastical sense, which, while it is something that MatPat goes for a real-life example, doesn't work here since there's more than just hypnosis happening, obviously shown with the footage of the game.
Under that sweet, doofy Luigi exterior we all know and love has existed Mr. L all along. He didn't need to be re-educated, he didn't even need to be threatened. He just needed to find himself in a hypnotic trance where he lost all his inhibitions and fears, and for once in his life wasn't afraid to show how he really felt. And it makes sense, doesn't it? Sarcasm for Bowser, feelings for Peach, open antagonism for Mario. When he falls into a trance, the real Luigi comes out, unearthing what seems to be some pretty intense feelings for the gang. They might not think he's in control, that this is all some alternate persona, but he most definitely is. That man, Mr. L, is the true form of Luigi, his thoughts and his ambitions. So there you have it. The most real Luigi has ever been with us was under hypnosis in Super Paper Mario.
Okay, even ignoring the fact you're taking another universe version of Luigi and slapping that the entire Luigi as a whole, you haven't proven a thing here! As I stated, hypnosis is done by people who only cable on a willing participant, which Luigi wasn't, so it can't be hypnosis. But everyone who was brainwashed by Anastasia showed resistance to her abilities. Especially considering that we're in a world that's filled with talking turtles that can fly, talking pizza toppings, and the ability to fold yourself into a paper airplane, using the real-world equivalent of hypnosis will not work here, especially since there wasn't a light show happening around your examples at the YouTube meetup. And this is even further disproven by the Koopas and Goombas that we see get brainwashed. If it was just removing their inhibitions and stuff, why the hell would they want to work for Count Bleck? The guy who practically kidnapped them at the beginning of the game and still had his assistant Nastasia brainwash them? If you want to say that maybe it was a different method for Luigi, well, that falls on the MatPat to prove that, but he doesn't. Even besides that, even more, there's a game that proves you completely wrong, MatPat. A game where we actually see the inner workings of Luigi's mind and see what he thinks of Mario, that automatically proves you wrong. Allow me to introduce you to Mario and Luigi Dream Team, where we actually get to see the subconscious of Luigi and what he really thinks.
The advent of this incredible new personage allowed the Green Thunder to unravel like never before. As they fight side by side on this journey through the lofty realm, we discover the secret to Luigi's inner livelihood. Why does Luigi put up with forever being player 2? Because he loves his brother. All he's ever wanted was to be with Mario, to help him, to fight with him, even when he doesn't need it. His older brother gives him strength, gives him hope, and makes him happy. This is a layer of development I'm certain nobody expected, but in the end, it made me even happier to be battling with them together. Don't you ever go telling me Mario characters never develop, because even within dreams, the meaning remains real. Luigi and Mario never let each other go.
You know what this video was? MatPat went to the YouTuber convention, got to see the hypnosis event, and thought that was cool. Remembers the one time that hypnosis happened in the Mario game and BLAM! Instant theory, in 3 minutes, enjoy your cup ramen with it. And with that, I'm done. Later, boys and girls.
Cute talking animals, a positive message of social acceptance, crack cocaine.
You know, I will readily admit that Disney's movies do have a darker theme to them, and Zootopia itself does have racial undertones to bring up. But in this video, MatPat will try to make the dark theme of Zootopia be a recounting of the drug conspiracy that happened in America's past. I am aware that he calls it an allegory, and I am aware of what an allegory is. However, the evidence that he uses to tie the film and the conspiracy together as an allegory...
It just raises too many questions.
Let's just dive in, shall we? Oh, and, by the by, spoilers for the film, you've been warned.
The idea of the minority group in society, the predators, facing prejudice and mistreatment from the majority is a pretty thinly veiled allusion to America's spotty history of race relations. Don't believe me? We see an ice cream parlor refuse to serve a predator.
Any reason why you're not telling us right now that it's Nick Wilde? For those who have not seen the movie, the predator that MatPat is talking about is Nick Wilde, a fox. And in the world of Zootopia, foxes are known to be sketchy con artists. In addition, you even say later, MatPat, in the video that it was Nick who was denied service, but you still neglect to say that the owner was. The owner was an elephant. Fox versus an elephant. Gee, I wonder which one's gonna win. If the owner was a smaller prey animal to the fox, then I could see your point. But considering the stereotype of foxes that I just alluded to, and that we've got a huge elephant doing this, it's not because of fear of predators, rather the stigma that foxes are considered con artists.
Police being quicker to draw weapons against predators.
Once again, you're being really ambiguous because this is the same scene, and it was Judy getting ready to draw her fox pepper spray. And considering that she saw Nick sneak his way into the ice cream parlor, she would have grounds to find it suspicious.
And even Judy hypothesizes that predators are biologically more savage than prey. Man, those are some heavy themes.
No. No, she did not make that hypothesis. She was repeating what the scientists said in a secret facility that had the predators locked up. Because she was put on the spot with a whole bunch of reporters, and she tried to answer questions on the fly. And considering that the scientist's words were still fresh in her head, she had nothing else to go off of. But hey, these are little nitpicks. It's not like MatPat blatantly ignores facts of the film, states outright, in order to make his comparisons to the drug conspiracy and crack. Right?
Get used to disappointment.
Time out, MatPat. You, the skeptical viewer, are probably shouting, Disney may go dark, but they don't go that dark. Hey, I understand your skepticism.
The most selfish, egotistical thing I've ever heard.
Thank you.
Wow. That's some condescending attitude you got to your detractors there, MatPat.
Obviously, the movie's characters don't smoke actual crack, but Zootopia has its own substance called night howlers, and the similarities between crack and night howlers are pretty surprising. One last reminder that it's about to strike spoiler o'clock. So number 1, night howler serum and crack are both synthesized from harmless plants.
Objection!
And right here the comparison doesn't work. You see, night howlers aren't harmless plants. They're shown in the movie as natural flowers that are used to repel insects and can kill said insects. We're even told that the flower in this state can induce ferocious dispositions if ingested, even by non-predator animals. Which, as you stay for the coca plant...
Similarly, if you took crack cocaine back to its most basic form, you'd probably walk right on past it without another thought. Crack, and cocaine in general, comes from the leaves of the coca plant. Raw coca is so harmless that most people make it into tea.
That is not the case with the night howler. Already the allegory is kind of failing, but I'm getting ahead of myself because there are a few more things I have to point out.
As we see in Zootopia, night howlers are flowers that grow wild on Judy's parents' carrot farm.
Nope. They weren't grown wildly on her farm. Stu Hobbs actually says he planted them there to keep the bugs away from his crops.
I use them to keep the bugs off the produce.
Nobody had any idea that they were key to some psychotropic drug until a fox tells them so.
I'm sorry, but did you even pay attention to the movie? The only thing the fox said was the flower's common name was the night howlers. It was again Stu Hobbs who said that the flowers caused berserk tendencies.
But I don't like the little ones going near them on account of what happened to your Uncle Terry.
Yeah, Terry ate one hole when we were kids and went completely nuts.
By the by, that was Gideon Gray, not Nick, who said that, by the way.
Even after they've been harvested, Judy mistakes the bulbs for onions when she stops a weasel who's stealing them to turn them into night howler serum.
Once again, I have to question if you even watched the film, because that was Chief Bobo who said they were onions.
You did stop a master criminal from stealing 2 dozen moldy onions.
And Judy knew the scientific term and even corrected him on it. As I said, night howlers are dangerous in their original plant form, and the movie outright states this.
We get a good look at the complicated chemistry lab used to produce night howler serum by Doug the Sheep and his partners. Given the variety and sophistication of equipment we see in the lab, it's reasonable to conclude that synthesizing night howler serum and crack cocaine are similar processes.
Considering that the night howlers are dangerous even in their base form, enough to turn a rabbit into a savage, and the method of introducing the chemical into the predators is to shoot them with a paintball filled with the liquefied night howler, there's more to this than just crack.
how fast you feel the effects of crack after you've smoked it, it's hard to locate an exact number, but smoking a drug is the fastest way to get it into your bloodstream outside of injecting it.
And another reason why comparing the night howlers to crack doesn't work. In the movie, the concentrated doses of the night howlers wasn't enough to take effect by simple touch. None of the victims smoked the night howler in the movie, and none of them did the drug willingly.
Some of the most official sounding people on the internet talking about crack claim that it works almost instantly. Obviously, the drugs aren't meant to be exactly the same. This is an allegory after all, but based on their effects, they might as well be.
Effect-wise, yeah, I can see that. However, pushing aside how it's introduced, it's still not done willingly, and the origin of the night howler syndrome isn't exactly safe either.
Movie, there's a big government conspiracy around the night howlers. Assistant Mayor Bellwether is the one behind the drug getting spread, developing a serum that her minions administer to predators via dart gun.
Being spread? No! No, it wasn't. The drug wasn't being spread. It was forcibly administered to a small select number of predators. At most, there were about 15 predators who were infected with the serum by being sniped by sheep. Crack, on the other hand, at least if we're going by conspiracy theories, was done by dealers and spread throughout smaller neighborhoods, which infected a whole bunch of more people. Which I think would be more than 15 if it was more than an epidemic.
She admits that she began the conspiracy to ensure that the prey majority could keep the peace by making everyone afraid of predators. As she puts it, fear always works. But it's not like in real life there was some big government conspiracy to provide African Americans with crack out of paranoia for national safety, right? Right? Well, evidence number 4. Night howlers and crack are both government conspiracies.
The moon landing was also fake. There's radio transmitter installed in the fillings of my teeth, and Elvis is still alive. Conspiracy!
This support of the Contras resulted in the CIA becoming involved with a bunch of drug smugglers. And this is 100% true. A Senate report confirmed that the drug traffickers had been provided with federal money.
He does not provide to even a link of the document in question in the description. Considering that he's gotten so many facts of the film wrong and still will get more wrong as we will go through this. And since you're the sole voice in your video, MatPat, I'm not going to take your word on this, especially considering that there are countless documents concerning the Senate and drugs. You could have at least even given a screenshot of the document, or at least told us what the specific title was of the document, because that would actually help your viewers who are interested in this topic to go search for it for themselves. This document could exist, but I don't have to search for it because you're the one who's using it as a fact in your little theory. You should be the one providing it.
Quote, I believe that they felt it was more valuable to sacrifice a particular sector of America and a race of people in America in order to save the whole country. End quote. It's an idea that Mayor Lionheart echoes towards the end of Zootopia, saying that they did, quote, the wrong thing for the right reasons, end quote.
Did I falsely imprison those animals? Well, yes, I did. It was a classic doing the wrong thing for the right reason kind of a deal.
And once again, you are taking things out of context, because Mayor Lionheart wasn't referring to the Night Howler stuff. He was referring to the kidnappings that he did to prevent panic because of the predators were going feral.
Zootopia even seems like it's making references to specific instances of the crack epidemic. In the movie, Mayor Lionheart gets set up to make it look like he's behind the Night Howler scheme and gets put in jail.
Did I falsely imprison those animals? Well, yes, I did.
What did I just say? He wasn't framed for the Night Howler scheme. He was arrested for kidnapping and false imprisonment.
Only to return to power after his release. It's...
No, he wasn't! In the credits of the movie, we can still see that he's in his cell. Hell, the wiki of the movie backs me up, and if I had clips, I sure as hell would use them to prove you wrong.
Awfully similar to Washington, D.C. Mayor Marion Barry, who was caught smoking crack, jailed, and then re-elected as mayor when he was released from prison. Stay classy, D.C.
Similar? The person you're using as evidence did the drug. Lionheart's crime was completely different, and the results were different. So bringing this up is pointless. And you know what? I can't do it. I'm done with this charade. Seriously, MatPat, you misrepresented the facts of the film just so you could twist them around to make this video so you could tie it into a conspiracy of crack. Congrats, you have just pulled the wool over millions of people's eyes. I will not deny that you could read some racial tensions in the film, but an allegory for the drug conspiracy? The amount of aerobatics just needed to justify this are so spectacular that I'm surprised you're not in gymnastics, MatPat. But considering that you scarred me for life with your Markiplier Photoshop pics, the last thing I want to see you is in tights.
What's more is that while Papyrus is just kinda the goofy sidekick, Sans is much more complex. Sure, he likes fart jokes, but he's also incredibly powerful and deadly serious.
Deadly serious. Get it? Because Sans kills you. I have never felt more closer to Papyrus. Speaking of, that right there was a loose statement, MatPat. He's not deadly serious unless you're taking the genocide route. Even then, he only gets deadly serious since, you know, killed his brother and pretty much everyone in the underground. Anyone would get serious at that point. On the note with Papyrus, while he's, for a nicer term, goofy, it's been stated he's as strong as Undyne. Heck, it's implied that he has access to the Gaster Blaster like Sans, and was holding back since he had to capture the protagonists of the game, not kill them.
But then, what or who is he? Well, the idea that he doesn't belong in Underworld seems to be correct. The evidence seems to point to the fact that he was, in fact, formerly a surface dweller. In the true pacifist ending of the game, as the group looks out onto the horizon, Papyrus asks Sans about the giant ball in the sky. Sans says, quote, "We call that the sun." This is important because A, the usage of the word we and knowledge of the sun shows that Sans has a kinship or knowledge with other humans, and B, that despite he and Papyrus both being skeletons, are supposedly brothers, and apparently appeared in Underworld at the same time, they clearly have two very different histories.
So here's where MatPat gets into the nitty-gritty of his theory. He's going to prove that Sans is Ness from Earthbound, and he has to start by proving Sans is human, or at least from the surface. So he begins by poking at a specific line where Sans says, "We call that the sun." Obviously that makes Sans human, because there has never, ever been a time that monsters and humans lived side by side. Oh wait! Literally the first thing in Undertale. Add to this, we don't really know how much older Sans is than Papyrus, and it's pretty likely that he could have just seen the surface at some point. We also know he's connected to the DM Gaster, and that's kind of why you don't talk about Gaster. And the royal scientists do seem to have a habit of getting access to human culture and knowledge. Just ask Alphys about Mew Mew Kissy Cutie, or Robot Hentai. Wait. Actually, never ask that. I'm sorry. I don't have a problem! You have the problem!
And in a genocide run during his boss fight, he says, quote, "Look, I gave up trying to go back a long time ago," end quote. And before you say he means going back to the surface world, that's clearly not the full story. His very next line of dialogue is, "And getting to the surface doesn't really appeal anymore either." Key word here is either. Yes, he seems to hail from the surface and wants to go back, but based on his dialogue, he no longer considers it his home.
So, if going back and going to the surface are two different things as far as Sans is concerned, what's more like that Toby Fox literally put a Sans protagonist from Earthbound in his game, transformed him into a super fleshed out skeleton, gave him a goofy font to talk in, hand-fisted him into the universe just to make a specific connection to the game he already has referenced several times, or Sans is talking about going back to a time before he and Papyrus ended up in Snowden. I mean, you do have all that stuff in his room, the Gaster Blaster, the implication that WD Gaster was working with someone. I'm just saying, guys.
We're left with a being that appeared out of nowhere, presumably from the human surface, but from a different time period, who seemingly has a power to teleport. That's a lot of questions and not a lot of answers.
Yeah, and you're just mucking them all up with all these assumptions. Seriously, the opening of text of the game already stated that monsters were on the surface a long time ago, so naturally they'd be from a different time.
But here's where things get really interesting. Sans has a hidden workshop that takes a fair amount of searching to find. You could say it takes a lot of determination to unlock. So I asked myself, what if the badge in Sans' drawer was that exact badge? Well, first off, it'd make Undertale connected to my favorite game, thereby making it even cooler. But that's still a pretty big logical leap. I needed more. And let me tell you, as I started looking, more and more pieces started to fit into place.
Alright, so long story short, MatPat has an on-camera nerd out of Alfist levels when he asserts that Sans' badge might be the Franklin badge from Earthbound. New rule, everyone. Do not ask MatPat about Mew Mew Kissy Cutie 2. It will not end well for anyone. Now, for the Franklin badge bit, I have to admit there's nothing really too implausible about this. There are tons of references to Earthbound scattered throughout Undertale, and the creator's a huge fan. Is it the badge? Is it not? Hard to say. There's no evidence really pointing to either or. It could just be a security badge or an identification badge. Also, more importantly, most important badge in gaming? The Boulder badge holds that title.
At the end of Earthbound, you're given a photo album covering your adventures throughout the game. To me, it's one of the best, most satisfying endings in gaming to look back on your journey in picture form. And what does Sans happen to have in his other drawer? A photo album filled with pictures of Sans with people you don't recognize. Of course, you don't know them. They're not characters present in Undertale.
I noticed that in the pictures from Earthbound, I'm seeing pictures of Ness with his friends. And I don't see a spooky, scary skeleton in them, even remotely. Photo album in Sans' workshop is supposed to be the final screenshots from Earthbound. Shouldn't the dialogue mention Frisco, I don't know, being puzzled why Sans is collecting pictures of another kid in a striped shirt?
And note the word that's used here. People you don't recognize, not underworld monsters. So that's 2 items oddly linked to the Mother series.
Frisk's surrogate mom is a goat. That is literally the biggest meme in the fandom. The entire pacifist route and moral structure of Undertale is based on seeing the Mook monsters in the game as actual characters and equivalent of value to people. Goddamn right the photo says people you don't recognize. Things like this are why Kara hated humanity and ruined everything. Whew. I just got the willies. I don't even have any skin.
Geniuses Apple Kid and Mr. Saturn create what's known as the Phase Distorter, a machine that allows people to travel through time and space. Except, it comes with a cost. It can't transport organic material. As a result, the young heroes must put their souls into robotic bodies to use the machine and thus save the world.
Thanks for getting that red flag, MatPat, on your theory. Since Sans bleeds in his boss fight, we can conclude that he's made up of organic material. Therefore, he couldn't use the Phase Distorter. Doesn't transfer organic material.
Machine, I think a broken Phase Distorter is behind that curtain.
Oh, did you hack the game and remove the curtain? No? Well then, that's a moot point.
Now that may seem like a stretch, but it actually explains a lot. If Sans wound up in Underworld via a Phase Distorter, it could provide a reason for why he's a skeleton. He used the machine as organic matter and suffered the consequences. Not killing him, but turning at least part of him into a pile of bones. It would also explain why Sans has given up hope for going home. Remember, the Distorter is a time machine. By being in Underworld, he's not only in a different place, but based on how he talks, he's also in a different time.
I'm pretty sure when someone says a Phase Distorter can't transport organic matter, they probably mean just that. Can't. And coming out as a living skeleton is a bit bizarre of an outcome. And it would probably mean that Ness and his buddies would have been fine, just not bothering with the robotic body. Also, for the Ness analogies, why Ness? I mean, couldn't be any one of the other 4 people? Heck, why not Dr. Andonuts? I'd be quicker to believe that, what with the fact that Toby Fox actually made an Earthbound hack focused on that character, retooled the same boss music from that hack for the Sans genocide fight, and then you've got the tie on Dr. Andonuts. The open spot on Sans' jacket visibly mirroring it. What, y'all think this is circumstantial evidence that I'm just inflating importance in order to reshape the game into something that fits my theory rather than allowing the evidence to guide my reasoning? Welcome to Game Theory! Funny you should mention that!
Layout of the surface bears some striking similarities to the world of Mother. When Undertale's crew of monsters are finally able to reach the surface and look out over the earth, they're met with a beautiful sunset falling across a landscape of a tall mountain, a large city, and a sandy area adjacent to water. A tall mountain to the east of a large city, separated by a desert, with all of it up against a coast. I don't know about you.
It's amazing how the map actually disproves you right here, since there's also a lake in a town that's not in the view of the game.
But to me, it seems like there's a definite connection between the world of Eagleland? Again, unclear how it's pronounced. Between the world of Eagleland and the surface world of Undertale.
You know, I really hope they aren't connected, because this means Ness and his buddies were tooling around, smashing people with home run bats and pacifying space invaders, while Asriel was apparently bursting out of the underworld to get killed in Kara's hometown. And yeah, that probably would have been a boss fight, or mentioned.
Nothing! Absolutely nothing!
I'm just saying, you need more than a geographical similarities to link the 2 stories. You need actual narrative, such as, I don't know, a hypothetical reason that Ness might jump, knowing full well what happens if you do into a Phase Distorter. because I'm still waiting on that.
But the strongest physical connection, the one that definitely unites these two franchises, comes from none other than Papyrus himself. He wears a custom-made costume known as his battle body, but if you look really closely at the design of the armor, you'll notice some markings on the chest. Is it just a throwaway detail? Oh no, that right there is an exact match to the ones that appear on the chests of Starman, the most iconic enemy of Earthbound. And look at the way he stands. I always thought it was awkward until I looked at the two characters side by side. Papyrus's curved arm and hand is a direct match to the curved arms of the Starman in the Mother series.
Now you're just reaching for that. For one thing, the poses are completely different. The only thing you're going on with the single arm, the other arm and leg are completely different, not to mention. I don't think you noticed, but Papyrus's head is about 3 times the size of the Starman's. For another thing, direct match apparently means when you overlay the sprites, you clearly see that the curved arms aren't even remotely matched. Do I even need to keep making this video, or should I just wait and see if this devolves into self-parody?
Oh, and finally, Sans is only one letter removed from being an anagram for Ness. That's just a fun one. I thought it was worth mentioning.
You know what's sad here? I actually thought this fun one was legit serious because it makes about as much sense as the other direct connections to Ness. For starters, why is Sans bigger than Ness? He's definitely taller, has different bone structures. He's definitely taller, given that he towers over Frisk and Kara. Why is he wearing a jacket? Why is his skull very bigger? Why is Papyrus a starman who thinks he's his brother? Why would anyone throw Ness into a phase destroyer to test his courage? Why doesn't Sans fight with a baseball bat, given that the home run bat is probably the most signature weapon in Earthbound and incidentally also a smash item? Why does he use a blue attack like Papyrus instead of Psy? Where is Psy rockin'? Where is he healing? Why does he only have 1 hit point? What's with the weird fourth wall awareness? Why?
Just raises too many questions.
One more. I got one more in me. Also, had the phase disruptor changed Ness into a left-handed skeleton? Don't worry, I'll explain myself later on that, but I don't want to be told off by Bruce Wayne again.
Toby Fox, the man behind Undertale, had previously worked on a Halloween hack for Earthbound. But this just wasn't a simple reskin. The Halloween hack tells the tale of Dr. Andonuts after the events of Earthbound. Remember I pointed him out? He's the one who made the phase distorter. In Toby Fox's version of the story, we see that after Gygus' defeat, the souls of the kids never return home. Instead, by going to the past to defeat Gygus, they create a new timeline that they're stuck in. As a result, Jeff never reunites with his father, Dr. Andonuts. And Dr. Andonuts goes crazy with guilt because he's the one responsible for creating the time machine and extracting the souls of his son and his son's friends to send them back to what he assumes was their death. In his mind, he killed 4 kids. And in Toby Fox's game, he's lost his mind trying to deal with that guilt. I'm telling you, this hack is dark. But that said, you see a lot of Undertale in this game. The appearance of Amalgamates, the first use of the awesome song Megalovania, the prototypes for Flowey, and the theme of having the choice to be non-violent in an RPG, sparing your enemies. But then why does all this matter to the theory? Well, remember, in Toby Fox's version of the story, the kids don't come back. They're stuck in the past with no hopes of getting home, just like Sans. And in the hack, one character is oddly missing, with no explanation as to why. Ness. Presumably in this timeline, his soul is in a different place than his 3 friends, which brings us back to Undertale. 3 faces with "Don't Forget" written on it. It's Ness trying to remember his 3 friends. In short, Undertale is a continuation of Toby's version of Earthbound, with Ness never being able to get home, adopting the name Sans, and accompanied by Papyrus, a former Starman, an alien force able to speak English and still equipped with his armor and signature posture, but without any knowledge of earthly things, like the sun. The pieces all just seem to fit. No, we need to—
Okay, did you guys get all that? Because that's about the strongest evidence MatPat has in all the video for this stuff. The Howling hack does exist, and it is created by the creator of Undertale. He did use ideas from the hack in Undertale, and it isn't crazy that he might want to put an Easter egg or two to connect their stories. You know, unless you start questioning on to going of why Ness. I mean, look what he's saying here. No, really look at it. Ness and his friends never came back in the Halloween hack from their break from Gygus. So, question. Wouldn't Sans be a robot? Simply gorgeous. No, not that robot. Actually, better question. If the Amalgamates are first seen in the Halloween hack, but have a completely different origin story, doesn't that imply the connection between these 2 games is just the fact that the creator recycled ideas from his hack to use in a polished professional product? It happens all the time. Just look at games like Mega Man, Sonic, Ace Attorney, heck, even Pokemon at times. Recycling assets is nothing new in the world of gaming.
And accompanied by Papyrus, a former Starman, an alien force able to speak English and still equipped with his armor and signature posture, but without any knowledge of earthly things, like the sun.
Then how the hell does Papyrus know about cars? Damn you, Papyrus!
The pieces all just seem to fit. And all we need is an appearance from Pokey/Porky, and we've got ourselves a true sequel.
True sequel. No, what I see here is someone trying to bring fanboyism into 2 slightly related games to tie them together. From what you've said in this video, I actually have to question if you even played Undertale and didn't just watch bits and pieces of a Let's Play on YouTube. But putting all weird jokes aside, the convoluted logic, and your positively creepy Undertale persona.
Stop looking into my soul!
You're wrong about Sans being Ness. How do I know? Remember when I mentioned Sans being left-handed? Well, From the actions in the game, 1. Him shaking the player's hand with his left hand, 2. Using the ketchup bottle and grill bees with his left hand, 3. Using his left hand for most of his attacks in his boss battle, and 4. Driving his Tricolonx Papyrus in the ending, steering it with his left hand. It strongly suggests that he's left-handed. Ness, however, he's right-handed. How do I know? Super Smash Bros., my friend. Nintendo likes to keep little things like that in the franchise update, hence why we have Link being left-handed in the fighting games. Ness, however, by looking at his victory pose and how he delivers his attack with the bat, we see the sides of him being right-handed. So, yeah, thanks for wasting 15 minutes of my life, MatPat. But this is what I've come to expect from game theory or even film theory. Either 2 years ago or the present, whenever MatPat tries to go into these sorts of videos, they end up becoming weak and garbage. I can admit, when he makes videos such as Star Fox's Metallic Legs, there was more scientific stuff at work and it made it logical yet at the same time enjoyable. Nowadays, it just feels like he's spewing theories and pulling up stuff out of nowhere just so he can rake in the YouTube dollars. All in all, this video, it gave me a bad time.
Stop looking into my soul!
One potential college major we've yet to touch on is law. And what better franchise to cover when tackling this new topic than the game that no one's ever played but everyone knows the meme to, Phoenix Wright. And even though the Ace Attorney series might not be filling in the courtroom gallery with rabid fans here in the States,
citation needed, cause guess what, Mr. Smartest Show in Gaming? If the Ace Attorney games aren't popular in the States, then explain all the fan websites, all the Phoenix Wright fan parodies, including the ones done by the same guy who's made Ghost music videos. Yee! I made a connection! All the Phoenix Wright fan games that are made, the fan projects such as Turnabout Storm, the fact that America's got all but one game in the entire franchise over here in some form or another, or the fact that there are a ton, and I mean a ton of cosplayers of the Blue Lawyer and his crew to even this day. Phoenix Wright is more than just the objection memes. That's like saying no one's played Pokemon because I like mudkips.
Finger-pointing paralegal is popular enough in Asia to warrant his own manga, anime, and musical.
Odd classifications aside, MatPat, thanks for demonstrating you have no idea what you're talking about when it comes to law. You guys want to know why? MatPat just described Phoenix Wright as a paralegal. As someone who's actually studied law and attempted to get into the field, paralegals are, yes, trained to be educated on the law, but by the very definition of a paralegal, they can't practice law. Great, we haven't even gotten to the actual theory yet, and he's already showing he doesn't know what he's talking about. Mercy on my dead soul.
Makes it pretty clear that Phoenix is the morally correct one who plays by the rules, and that the prosecutors are the ones who don't care about the law and instead just care about getting a conviction. But when you actually stop to look at the way that Phoenix conducts his investigations and trials, it becomes clear that the one criminal in Ace Attorney who gets away with everything is Phoenix Wright himself. Now, fully recognizing that I'm not exactly a legal expert, in researching this episode I consulted with an appellate prosecutor, basically a fancy lawyer for the state attorney general, who helped me to make my case against Phoenix.
Who we have no clue who this guy is. You don't mention him at all by name, so we don't know if he's actually qualified to be a legal aid in this matter. Even if you just told us what state you consulted the guy from, that would be a good enough clue for your viewers who actually like to trek up for your evidence to see if it would work. But nope! Not that this actually matters, as MatPat will actually be shooting himself in the foot later in the video, and thus wasting everyone's time. Again!
Let's start off with the way that Phoenix presents his evidence and witnesses in court. Take that! He has a flair for the dramatic, often entering evidence or calling a witness at the very last second. In episode 3, when Phoenix is pressed to give an explanation of how Jack Hammer might have stolen a steel samurai costume, he surprises everyone by presenting an empty sleeping pill bottle he found in the defendant's trailer. This gives his defendant, Will Powers, an alibi that Phoenix conveniently hadn't mentioned until that moment. And Phoenix's surprises aren't just limited to physical evidence. In episode 2, after a long period of questioning April May, Phoenix calls a surprise witness to testify, the hotel's bellboy. And while both these surprises make for interesting drama, they're not allowed.
Now, as anyone who's actually played the games knows this, Phoenix Wright isn't the only one who does this. Every prosecutor does this as well. More recently, I had a chance to replay the third game, and in the second case, prosecutor Godot, I was never able to pronounce his name, forgive me! The coffee aficionado withheld evidence from the police in the court until Phoenix Wright brought up his case. More specifically, a brooch. One example from the first game, how about Edgeworth giving the updated autopsy report that you get for the second case? And as MatPat will state later about discovery, that applies to updated information, so the defense attorney will be informed on their case as well. And the prosecutors have an even bigger issue: witnesses. In addition to discovery procedures to obtain evidence from the prosecution, the same applies to witnesses, as there are courtroom procedures to these sorts of things. Submissions of witnesses, their statements, and etc. What MatPat here is doing is misleading his audience into thinking that it's only Phoenix who's doing this, when in actuality, every attorney in the games do it. Both defense and prosecution who are guilty of it. But that's assuming they're actually going by real-world law. And it's even a moot point, as MatPat will soon say.
Both these surprises make for interesting drama. They're not allowed in US courts. But most importantly of all, the Japanese system actually allows Phoenix to pull the dramatic surprises we talked about earlier.
Yep, he basically just shot himself in the foot. Badly. That was all fluff and no substance. MatPat, your case would be thrown out of court since you just proved your own case wrong.
This gives Edgeworth zero time to think about the evidence and how it affects his case before he's expected to respond. In the case of the bellboy, when other lawyers don't know that a certain witness exists, they have no ability to prepare a cross-examination.
Even then, you want to know something else about the bellboy? Edgeworth actually knew about the presence of the bellboy when we actually learned that Edgeworth was the one hiding the bellboy in the first place. How do we know this? Because of the bellboy's own testimony. He says that Edgeworth had actually guided him in what to say, so not only did Edgeworth know about the bellboy, but he had manipulated his testimony into his favor. But hey, we're getting ahead of ourselves here. There's one more point I want to point out before we skip more of MatPat's fluff.
MatPat, but you're using US court rules, and Ace Attorney is clearly not happening in an American court. To which I say, objection! That was awesome. No wonder it's become a meme. According to Janet Sue, Capcom localizer for Ace Attorney, canonically the series takes place in Los Angeles. An alternate universe version of Los Angeles, in fact, where Japanese and American culture intermingle to create a sweet love baby of a court system. By the way,
considering the fact that there's law mentioned in Edgeworth's game about restrictions on guns, it's safe to assume that there's different laws and different procedures to our world's law. After all, in your own video, MatPat, alternate world. That doesn't automatically mean that the laws in our world apply to the Phoenix Wright world. Hell, if we can have chicks basically call back the dead, we have a disease called Incuratus, or even have a country called Borginia, then it's easy to think that there are different laws going on in the Ace Attorney world than our own. Even throwing that to the side, there have been debates about the Ace Attorney as actually a satire in the Japanese legal system, especially since how the defendants are treated mostly guilty instead of innocent until proven guilty. So why are you only focusing on American law, MatPat? There's a lot of work going on with the Ace Attorney games when it comes to theories, but instead of actually doing a little bit of legwork, let's just villainize the one guy who's actually fighting to have people who are being treated as criminals and be proven innocent to make him look like a monster. Sounds like MatPat's MO nowadays when it comes to character-based videos.
to get in, and as a working lawyer, he should know this. Without the warrants, everything that he finds is thrown out of the case. In the US, this is what's called the exclusionary rule. It's an place in Los Angeles. An alternate universe version of Los Angeles, in fact.
What gibberish! This makes no sense! And he's teaching you it?!
This next point, a fan points out to me, that even though MatPat knows that the world of Ace Attorney has a mysterious hybrid of American and Japanese law, MatPat is only looking on the American side and not presenting Japanese laws to help back this up. And frankly, if he's not going to put the legwork into this, why should I do the work for him?
But he's not doing anything that could get him thrown in jail, right? Not so fast. At the beginning of episode 2, Phoenix arrives at the Fane Company law offices after Hottie McLegal here has been murdered. Instead of calling the police immediately, he collects evidence for himself. Like the note the victim appeared to be writing as she died in a glass that was broken in the struggle. And the fact that he knows that she's still warm implies that he touched her body. Not in a creepy way, I hope. There is no indication that Phoenix tells the police about this evidence when they arrive. And it's at this moment that Phoenix Wright goes from being a lawyer who bends the rules to a full-fledged criminal. The alteration, destruction, or concealment of physical evidence falls under the crime of obstruction of justice. And when he touches evidence, especially when he chooses to hide a receipt with a victim's sister's name on it, an object which directly implicates her in the murder. Ooh, murder? There's been murder done. An object which directly implicates her in the murder, he's tampering with evidence. Both obstruction of justice and tampering with evidence can carry jail time and fine.
Alright, I got a lot to say here because this is really disrespectful to the Ace Attorney games, its fans, and I will not stand for this. 1. Phoenix's relationship with Mia Fey. Considering that Mia Fey actually saved Phoenix's life in a trial, which you would know if you actually played the other games, MatPat, she became a mentor to him by teaching him the fundamentals of being an attorney. It's been shown that in the games that Phoenix has a connection with Mia Fey, a real deep one. And seeing someone who saved your life and taught you everything you knew about your profession, it's acceptable to see that someone be a bit shaken to see someone they care about dead in front of them. Also, Hottie McLegal? What are you, Larry Butts? Oh God! And as a side note, Phoenix only touched her shoulder. How do I know? Cause the game told me. Thanks for trying to make Phoenix out to be a creeper, MatPat. Your own video says it, so stop trying to make characters into deviants. 2. You really have a short attention span. Cause guess what? Right after the police arrive, Phoenix is taken into questioning about the murder, and a lot of the time the police do ask questions if someone has touch with the crime scene. It's just done off screen. And thirdly, you don't know how evidence works in Ace Attorney. Phoenix does not take the note that has Maya written on it in blood. He just jots it down in his court record. Unless the game says otherwise, the evidence isn't touched by Phoenix, nor is it directly added to his personage. If that were the case, then he'd have a huge ass bust in his pants. And the games themselves prove you wrong. Hell, even your own footage proves you're wrong, MatPat, because if you look at your video, Phoenix doesn't take the note. It's left next to Mia's body. Hell, part of the reason that Maya gets arrested is because Detective Gumshoe finds the receipt next to Mia's body. It says so in the game itself!
He implicates her in the murder, he's tampering with evidence. Both obstruction of justice and tampering with evidence can carry jail time and fine.
Tampering with evidence? Oh, you mean like what you do?
Boo! You stink!
And I'm done. Look, and I know for a fact that people think I hate MatPat, but frankly, I'm not gonna stand around and let my favorite game series be tarnished because he wanted to make a few quick bucks in a video. This video of MatPat carries a lot of the problems that most of his more recent videos hold. He cherry-picks evidence, he lies, and most of the time it comes off as if he doesn't even know what he's talking about and acts like a hipster like he's, "Hey guys, I know exactly, I'm the gaming guru of everything!" This video was pointless and had rush production written all over it, especially since it looks like MatPat didn't even get past the first game's 4th case. I say this because the first game's 5th case actually talks about how evidence law works in the Phoenix Wright universe. I mean, there's a lot of more things going on in that one, but yeah. And it's not like MatPat has excuses on this. The games are available on Nintendo eShop as a bundle, you can get them on your iPhone for real cheap, and hell, you can just watch a walkthrough on YouTube if you're too cheap that case. There's plenty of them. This wasn't made to slam MatPat. This was to help my favorite video game franchise, Phoenix Wright. And while the series may have its high and low points, I still respect the lawyer in blue. And MatPat, for trying to make Phoenix Wright into a criminal, you're just as bad as—
Hello, Internet! Welcome to Game Theory, where I just flew back from Japan, and boy are my arms tired. Get it? Because I had to carry my luggage and it was all really heavy.
Not a joke, but an incredible simulation.
Why, thank you for killing the pacing of that already tired and terrible joke. Kill me, please.
You already are. This is your personal hell.
Of course, it's MatPat. It'll always be my personal hell.
Fit together. First, although there may not be 150 available right now, let's look at the Pokemon that you can catch in the game. The ones that are alive and well and walking about the world around you. You can see all the usual suspects, your typical Rattatas, Pidgeys, and so many damn Nidorans hovering around awkwardly in augmented reality land just waiting around for your capture ball. But then you have Pokemon like Omanite and Omastar, Kabuto and Kabutops. Pokemon that, by Generation 1, are all extinct. Only able to be added to your Pokedex by reviving ancient fossils. And yet in Go, they're just wandering around, alive and well. If we assume that Go does possess a lore that ties in with a larger Pokeverse, that would mean that Go is set before Gen 1.
Well, duh. But what you kinda ignore, MatPat, is that those ancient Pokemon were extinct millions of years ago. We are talking about 300 million years if we can believe the Pokedex. So white Kabutos and Omanites don't fit into the timeline you're presenting. Lord Helix proves you wrong.
All hail the Helix fossil. All hail the Helix fossil. But more seriously, this is a really big fault in your theory, as later you'll bring up Lieutenant Surge in the Pokemon War, so this makes the timeline thing all the more confusing.
So that's pretty weird, but it gets even better. Who isn't in the game from the original set of 151? Articuno, Zapdos, Moltres, Mew, and Mewtwo, obviously, but they're all legendary, so no big surprises there. But that still leaves one curious gap in the Pokedex. Ditto, because I looked into it, and for all the recent rumors that he's region-specific to Africa and all that, it simply isn't true based on the evidence that I can tell. All the images that have been posted online have been largely debunked as photoshopped. So then that begs the question, why out of all the Pokemon is Ditto missing from the roster?
I think it should be noted that on the exact same day this video came out, Ditto was revealed to be in the game.
But he already admitted that in his next video on Hello Neighbor.
True, and I'm not faulting Matt on that either. Rather, I'm faulting him on his research, since there were confirmed reports for at least a month before this that there were going to be more Pokemon released out into the game, and that this theory should have been taken a little bit more time to construct. It's kind of like his film theory on Doctor Strange.
Don't mention Z-Rush garbage. Scripting a theory on a trailer 2 weeks before the movie is released and uploaded a month after the movie premiered is simply dumb.
Regardless, this as well as the first Hello Neighbor video, where he was using out-of-date materials that are no longer canon in the game, so that had he waited after the information was revealed, he wouldn't have to deal with the comments that said Ditto came out.
He's the only one who's not a legendary. Well, consider the following. A popular theory circulating the internet a few years ago was that the Pokemon Ditto was created in attempts to clone Mew. Come to think of it, why did I never cover that one? The fact that Ditto isn't in the game points to the idea that this is a game happening before the cloning experiment goes awry. In fact, Mewtwo being absent from the game supports it as well. He's not in the game because he doesn't exist yet. Just like the Omanites and Kabutos not being extinct yet, Go takes place at a time before Mew was attempted to be cloned, hence the reason both Mewtwo and Ditto are absent. Boom! Mind blown.
Truth be told, I like the Ditto as a flawed Mew clone theory, but it is a rather shaky foundation to build on. It doesn't quite explain why you can catch Dittos in every other region, and in Pokemon Red, Blue and the remix you can catch Dittos at other locations as well. Also, Mewtwo was rather prominent in the Pokemon Go announcement trailer. It is seemingly planned to appear as some sort of event boss eventually, but Pokemon Go is somewhat infamous for lacking features at this point.
Indeed, but there are some other Pokemon in the game itself that do bring up questioning the timeline other than Kabuto and Ammonite, but we'll get more into that.
Alright, so the available roster of Pokemon seems to line up, but that's not all. The rudimentary gameplay also factors in quite nicely. You hurl balls to catch Pokemon that you stumble across in the wild. Just happen to hope that your skill in tossing is enough to lock in that Poliwag you've been eager for. There's no battling to weaken them. Maybe you use a Raspberry to help your odds, but that's about it. Does that remind you of anything? I don't know about you, but to me, I immediately think of the Safari Zones. Parks built as nature preserves protecting the earlier days of Pokemon catching, where again, trainers are restricted to just throwing balls and not actually engaging in battle.
Then where's the rock and dirt throwing mechanic? Those are both prominent in various versions of the Safari Zone. Ow!
I think maybe you have to pick up rocks from the ground. Nope, I just broke a window.
Sighs. Great. More money pried from my wallet. Thanks.
In the game, you don't battle to gain levels, you do it by feeding your Pokemon candy. Shove enough bit of honey down your Squirtle's gullet and you're gonna get a Wartortle come hell or high water. Sounds a lot like rare candy from the main games, no? Where giving your Pokemon a candy causes them to level up. But one thing we've never stopped to consider is the actual name of that item. Rare candy. It's a very specific word choice. What made them rare in the first place? If it's such a useful thing for trainers, why not mass produce the stuff? Well, think about what the candy's made out of. Other Pokemon. It's a joke everyone's made when you transfer your 100th Rattata to create candy. I mean, let's face it, that Rattata's going to the professor's meat grinder. I mean, the candies are species specific and everything. So what if what made them rare was a movement among the people of the Pokemon world protesting the inhumanity of this practice? Sure, it was a fast way to gain levels, but it was deemed too cruel, and so candies started to disappear, leading them to become, say it with me now, rare. That would also explain why rare candy isn't sold in stores in the main series games. It always has to be found lying on the ground somewhere. You know that someone would want to make a profit off of those things, and some market somewhere would sell them, but nope, no store owner touches them, meaning that there must be some sort of ban against selling these sorts of things.
Oy, this segment. Oh, my Arceus. He didn't hear me, did he?
What is it with MatPat and cannibalism lately? Also, we can buy rare candy in the main games. For example, I can buy as many as I want in Pokemon X and Y at the Battle Mansion for BP. They are not worth a high price, but if I wanted to, I could buy them en masse. Not for money, mind you, but it is still an official way to buy them.
You forget that rare candies can also be won, such as getting them at the Goldenrod Tower in the second generation games, but there's a bigger problem with the rare candies being the same candy in Pokemon Go.
What's that?
The fact that you can use rare candies on any Pokemon and not a specific Pokemon like in Pokemon Go. If they are leftover candies from Pokemon Go, then they should only be usable on certain Pokemon.
Well, MatPat does mention that the candy in Pokemon Go is merely the beginning. He does imply that they developed rare candy over the years. However, it is still a rather shaky theory and very unlikely.
It's a leap in logic on his end since he doesn't explain how the candies go from only affecting a specific Pokemon to every Pokemon. If he's claiming that there's a process, then he has the burden of proof to do so.
That's why I don't think it's a more common explanation like overuse causing the supply to plummet. Even if they were overused, they would still be sold in stores. So anyway, if Pokemon Go were the origin story, we see the beginnings of candy, and then by the time the main series rolls around, it's become outlawed and is thus rare.
But that doesn't make any sense, especially considering how the two candies are extremely inconsistent between the games. Since, for example, Pikachu, who doesn't need to level up in order to evolve, but rather needs a Thunderstone. Or if we want to stick to levels, why does it take 25 candies to get my Squirtle to evolve into a Wartortle? If these were the future rare candies, then logically you need 15 of the Squirtle candies just to get a caught Squirtle to evolve into a Wartortle.
It is not that far-fetched to assume that rare candy is an improved version of that candy. I have to give MatPat that. But let's get back to the name, shall we? MatPat really dwells on the fact that they are called rare candy, ignoring the fact that they are called mystery candy in the Japanese games. So there's nothing really rare about them.
And before someone says something in the comments, why is it okay for MatPat to use the original Japanese games of, say, Final Fantasy to look at religious undertones, but ignore the Japanese sources of other games when they go against his theory?
Keep that in mind, we're gonna get back to Japan later.
Feels good not to get electrocuted when I curse out Sorry,
I was late. I was waiting on my latte. Who the bloody me are you?
A devoted follower?
Oi, boss! We're not animating our fox or getting electrocuted. Too much effort. Whatever. Instant goal!
Well, that was odd.
Analyzing the declining supply of an in-game item is thinking too far into all this? Well, think again. We can actually see it happen with the other major item from Pokemon Go, raspberries. So in Pokemon Go, once you cross level 8, you get access to this special item at Pokestops. And they drop fairly regularly. They're not rare by any means. And across Gen 3 and Gen 4, they're still around, but now fast forward to Generation 5 and 6, which are confirmed as the latest dates in the Pokemon timeline. Now, all of a sudden, the item descriptions talk about how rare these items are. Interesting, no?
He's not serious, is he?
Yep. That description MatPat is showing says that those berries are rare in the Unova region.
Oh! Well, lovely! I guess if we look at the actual item definition... Oh wait, look here! It says, and I quote, a berry to be used in cooking. This berry is very rare and hard to obtain in the Unova region. Used to make Pokeblocks that will enhance your coolness. Its red flesh is spicy when eaten. Notice something? Notice how the Gen 6 games that take place in Kalos and Hoenn state that the berry's hard to find in a different region. Not their region. You're not putting in the full details here, Matt, and it's something that's kind of giving me an aneurysm for the last year.
They're actually quite easy to get in Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire. You get more there than in any other game, and you can of course grow additional ones. And here's a fun fact about fruits of any kind. Some are more common in one country than in others.
First person that we meet in Pokemon Go is Professor Willow, our guide through all things Pokemon. If this is indeed the first game in the series with serious ties to the main franchise, then presumably we should see this guy again, right? Well, what if I told you that we do? In Pokemon Gold, Silver, and Crystal, he's none other than Jim Lear Price. Now that may initially seem like a stretch, but stay with me here. First, look at their posture and hair color. Both are holding their Pokeballs in a very similar way, and both have white hair. But Price is old and has gray hair, I hear you saying, and yeah, you're right, that's absolutely correct. That could very well be the explanation. But also, someone with white hair who grows old would also keep his white hair into old age. You can't just rule it out. They also both have a fondness for an outer coat with a popped collar. So the design shares similarities, sure, but obviously that's all circumstantial evidence. We need something more solid.
Minor nitpick, but that's his image from Heart Gold and Soul Silver. Here's what he looks like in the Gold and Silver games. While this may be minor, it will bite MatPat in the foot. Hard.
Oh, where should I begin with this? First of all, why does MatPat think that posture of a character is any kind of proof? Sure, it is a better fit than the Papyrus Diamond connection in the Sans Nest theory.
Excuse me, please. Much better.
But there's nothing special about that pose. And it's not like high colors are rare in Pokemon. Also, take a look at the art MatPat uses to prove his point. Willow has black eyes while Pryce has brown eyes, and you can't blame it on the art style either, as Candela has brown eyes. If Willow and Pryce were the same person, don't you think they would have the same eye color?
He does admit that this is circumstantial evidence, but is real proof? Oh, Arceus.
It's like claiming that Danger is my middle name. It could be completely metaphorical.
Well, in Heart Gold and Soul Silver, when his last Pokemon is in critical condition, Pryce will say the following, quote, "Willow is my middle name. Willow is flexible and not easily broken. I'm not giving up yet," end quote. What a weird detail. If you call him later in the game, he also brings it up again in phone calls. Is it a coincidence that these two share not only a similar pose, but also the same name? And it's not just any name, mind you, it's a tree name, which means a whole heck of a lot when you consider that, to my knowledge, anyone with a tree name in the Pokeverse is, or at least has been, a professor.
You know, despite the fact that Willow from Pokemon Go is probably more of a last name, and as you stated, Pryce's middle name is Willow, which is a weird way to address someone with a title, there's actually a really, really sad point here. You would have had a much stronger theory here had you used Pryce's original name from the Japanese game, Yanagi, which, surprise, surprise, is Japanese for Willow. It would have made a lot more sense, and you wouldn't have to use your roundabout way to prove your point.
However, Professor Willow is still called Professor Willow in the Japanese version of Pokemon Go, so there's a very clear distinction, and it implies that they are from different regions. Okay, Johto is the most Japanese region in the series, so you could make an argument that Willow changed his name into Yanagi to better blend in with the locals when he decided to settle down there. But that would be quite a stretch.
Once again, burden proof falls onto MatPat with that scenario.
So you're saying I'm doing a better job than him right now?
It's kind of like the expectation that anyone named Jeeves is eventually going to become a butler. Obviously, the exception to this rule is Ash, but that's the anime. And the anime has questionable canonicity, and it's not like he grows older anyway. Who knows, he might grow up to become a professor, etc, etc, etc. To me, at least, I like the story that this theory creates. But at the beginning of the episode, I mentioned that if this is indeed true, then Go might answer one of Pokemon's longest-held mysteries. And that, my friends, is the origin of the Great Pokemon War. Ever since Generation 1, the internet has speculated about a mysterious Pokemon War alluded to by Lieutenant Surge during your gym battle with him. I propose to you that this war is one caused by disagreements between Team Mystic, Team Valor, and Team Instinct about the proper role and use of Pokemon. Get this, we know that the war has to take place in Lieutenant Surge's lifetime, so it's within 40 years of Generation 1.
Then why bring up Kabuto and Ammonite? They can only reappear in the history of the games thanks to cloning. And even then, they'd be used for studying and not be out in the wild, so it would have been a lot more modern than that.
Because Pokemon that were extinct 300 million years ago were clearly alive when this guy was in his 30s. It all makes sense!
This guy is no AZ living for 3,000 years or anything. That also means it has to come after the creation of the first Pokeballs, as, according to the game's lore, modern Pokeballs were first developed back in 1925 by Professor Westwood. And what do we have in Pokemon Go?
Professor Westwood is an anime-only character.
And you just got done telling us a few minutes ago that the anime has questionable canon.
But that's the anime, and the anime has questionable canonicity, and it's not...
So why are you using an anime-only character to prove your point?
If we consider the anime canon, it does debunk your Professor Willow as Pryce theory, as we see a young Pryce in that show, with brown hair.
Well, for all the rudimentary game mechanics, we do have one modern idea, and that is balls. Modern balls. And yet, by the start of Generation 1, Team Mystic, Valor, and Instinct are no more. No one even mentions them. Also, we see in Go that Willow is in his late 20s, early 30s-ish, which would place him around Pryce's age by the time the events of Silver and Gold would roll around. Pryce even mentions having to go through hardships in his life. In the anime, that's losing his Piloswine, but in the games, he's older than Surge, meaning he must have gone through the same war that Surge did.
No, not necessarily. Hardships can mean anything, not just war. You're just generalizing to make a connection, which is your shtick nowadays.
Though it is likely that he was at least alive during the war.
Even then, that doesn't mean he participated in it, or is the hardship that he brings up.
But most of all, look at the Pokemon created prior to the start of Generation 1. First Porygon, and then Mewtwo. It's actually confirmed by the official Bulbapedia timeline that Porygon came first, and then years later Mewtwo showed up. Both are artificial Pokemon, created via programming in Porygon's case, or cloning in Mewtwo's. Decisions that I guarantee are gonna be pretty controversial to people. Artificially creating life? Nuh-uh. That's gonna make some people very, very upset. And
okay, to put the final nail into the coffin, Porygon. You show the timeline yourself, MatPat. It was created 10 years before the events of Pokemon Red and Blue. That is a sweet spot for the war, but you are forgetting that Pokemon Go, according to your theory, takes place years before the war. Especially since Professor Willow would need to age about 30 years to look like Pryce. Your evidence just doesn't add up. And it ignores the fact that you can't catch wild Porygons until Gen 5, and only in very specific areas.
Pokemon Go, we have a Porygon, but not a Ditto or a Mewtwo, meaning that this slots right in that sweet spot from the timeline where one exists and the other one doesn't. Thus,
and yet somehow we have a miraculous fossil Pokemon roaming about. There could be two explanations here. One, cloning was perfected here, which is already creating artificial life, so there would have already been prior examples of this happening. Or the game makers didn't know about the fossil Pokemon mechanic and just wanted to put them in willy-nilly. Considering that the first one goes against your theory, I'm more than willing to go with the second one, especially considering Niantic's tendencies.
It's almost like this game was developed by a completely different studio than the main series.
I propose that Pokemon Go not only connects to the main franchise games, but tells the story of the start of Lieutenant Surge's mysterious Pokemon War. One fought between Valor, Mystic, and Instinct over the creation and use of man-made Pokemon. A war that was either prompted by the creation of Mewtwo or ended by the creation of Mewtwo. In the end, Mystic and Instinct team up to win against Valor, hence having a society dominated by professors studying Pokemon in the wild and battling being relegated to formal competitions regulated by the Pokemon League by the time Gen 1 rolls around.
But wait, why would Team Mystic join up with that? They're a team that's researching for evolution of Pokemon, so why would they work to outline an item that would be a lot easier to evolve Pokemon outside of battling?
Also, why can't Valor be the victor? While Pokemon methods are much more organized nowadays, Pokemon is all about battling. Sure, professors are still respected, but the champ of the Pokemon League usually plays a greater part in the story and seems overall more important. Not to mention that the more experienced battlers would have an edge in combat.
Well, unless you count Kui, but we really can't mention that since this was probably during the video's production.
Is it a stretch? Am I overthinking a really simple mobile app that was created by people who didn't fully understand the mechanics of the game? Yeah, probably, but personally, I like this one a lot, because it fits together a lot of pieces for a mystery I think the creators of the Pokeverse forgot a long time ago.
Well, when you take a hammer to a puzzle piece, you can pretty much make it fit anything. Speaking of fitting, it's fitting to wrap up this and so all he does is try to get his viewers to engage in his comments section and promote some other stuff.
Your evidence is vague at best, if not completely useless, especially the fossil Pokemon and Porygon don't add up. Is it possible that Willow is a young Pryce? Maybe, but there's no point that really supports it, especially since the Japanese version kept the English name to differentiate the two.
Then there's your go against your own criteria for what you're using to support your theory. You go against the anime when it goes against your theory, but when it supports it, you're all for it. Pryce being the prime example here. You're blatantly ignoring context, as in the case of Raspberries, and passing it off to your viewers on like this.
In the end, this theory is not as insulting as others, but it is still a bad theory that holds no ground. All we know for sure is that there was some sort of war. Not to mention that Lieutenant Surge is supposed to be American, which opens up a completely new set of questions.
So essentially MatPat's trying to squeeze something out there that may be strong on the surface, but once you pull a few threads, it comes apart.
Exactly. So class, what did we learn?
Don't try to explain the story of an unfinished mobile app that was never intended to tell a story?
Correct! And now back into the back.
You'll never catch me alive!
I know you're already dead.
Yo, Bonehead, how you doing? Oh, it's the new guy. What are you doing here? You're supposed to be working on your video game stuff. Yeah, no. You guys are going on the beach, and I figured, hey, I like to tan. Can you even tan? You got no skin, says the ghost with a floating skull. Touché. but that does not answer my question. Well, I was surfing the internet looking at game stuff, and I found this little video about Splatoon. Oh, really? Wait. If you're telling me this, then... Oh... Alright. Who's it from? Oh, I think you know who it is. Wait. No. Yep. You son of a... Stupid trash can. Blah blah blah. Insert snappy comment of how I'm covering game theory again. Yeah! Inklings! I want to say that I am glad that MatPat actually went back to science with his videos, which is, you know, something I actually like about him. But unfortunately, this video left a very sour taste in my mouth. You don't even have a mouth. Shut up, you trash can! Now, before we begin, there's one point I need to address about the video.
But anyway, today's episode is a science-based one and has absolutely nothing to do with lore, so let me give you the short version of the story for those of you who haven't played it.
Now, as I stated before, I actually like it when MatPat goes into more scientific analysis of video games, but the fact of the matter is that you're ignoring lore in a video game like this is actually kind of detrimental. Not only for the fact that you actually bring up gameplay aspects which are completely tied into lore, as in the fact that, you know, the Inklings can transform into kid and squid forms at will when they reach 14, which is heavily tied in not only to the gameplay but into the lore. You can't exactly ignore it. Now, I realize that MatPat says this is purely a scientific episode, ignoring the lore of Splatoon, which is actually pretty damning considering a few of his claims. For example...
I'm here today to answer the rhetorical question Nintendo never thought would be answered. Are the Inklings biologically more of a kid or more of a squid?
The answer to that question is in the single-player missions of the game, as well as promo materials that were made for the game's initial run. The fact that MatPat goes out of his way to completely ignore the lore of the games, to go for a more scientific run, gives me the vibe that he never really touched the game up to this point. Also, before we continue, we need to talk about one more thing that MatPat seems to take out of context.
Cephalopods being squid, cuttlefish, and octopodes. And yes, Internet, you heard that right. The official plural version of octopus is octopodes.
Octopodes, which is pretty rare and appears only in British English.
Do you even dictionary, bro?
Such a tasty ego. I love it, I really do. Since you completely gloss over the fact that the video that you actually referenced to and that you actually put this in...
Well, what does this mean for you? If you say octopuses, you can continue to do so without fearing you're an ignorant slob. If you say octopi, you can continue to do so, but realize you have no grounds to tell people who say octopuses that they are ignorant slobs. And if you say octopodes, you'd better be prepared to deliver this spiel at a moment's notice and in a British accent.
Let's see those acting skills, MatPat! I want to see you make the Queen of England blush with an attempted British accent. Didn't you try that once and it backfired on you? Shut up!
If you look at the mechanics of the game and a little bit of science, it is clear that the Inklings are actually way more of one than the other. Oh, so much more.
And this is where I have to ask a very deep question. If you're looking at the mechanics of the game, why is the lore thrown out? Especially since it's a means that can actually prove you're completely right in this case, especially with your scientific evidence to back it up. Sure, you can still do the science methodology, and that's something that I really used to like about game theory, but you can make 1,000 theories and bring in as many real-world facts as you want, but it wouldn't matter if the game's lore went completely against that.
Off here, there are some easy things that we can just cross off by looking at game models. For example, although Inklings walk upright on land, we also see them totally melt into the ground for fast travel and recharging ink. This actually says a lot about their structural anatomy. While the Inklings definitely need to be able to support activities like running and shooting an ink gun, they're likely doing it with almost zero actual bones. This puts a solid point in the squid column. When sprayed across the playing field every time you get rollered, there's not all that much other than a whole lot of fluid in there. If that's the...
Not going to disagree, but tell me, MatPat, when was the last time a squid could transform into a human? Especially in the amount of time that it takes to transform in the game? And again, you know what would have actually proven you right? The game's lore, since there's actually items you can collect called the Sunken Scrolls, one of which being an X-ray of the Inkling, revealing that they don't have bone structure and have more anatomy of that of squids. Now I'm going to do something I don't normally do in these sorts of things, as I've already said, and I'm going to jump a bit around. Since I want to point out that throughout the entire video, MatPat's been giving a scorecard for the kid and squid portions.
However, another point for kid is that land dwellers need a lot of special features, like for instance, eyeballs.
And after this point in the video, he doesn't really go back to his list. He brings up the eyes, and while he doesn't give it, coupled with the next segment that he goes into brain activity, and that it can go either way.
The point is, even though you think intelligence would be an easy win for the kid column here, the ways we see Inklings acting in the game leaves the possibility of it going either way.
Since after this segment he goes into the RNA portion, so one can assume that the point system would be at the same, since it'd be 2 points for kids and 1 for squids. Yet when we get to the RNA segment, he automatically declares the Inklings to be squids. Putting aside the fact that the game tells you outright that they are squids, what was the point of having all this in the scoreboard? In all honesty, and at best, the stuff you bring up makes this a tie! Why? Why even have a scoreboard mechanic in the entire video if you're just going to throw it out and ignore everything else you've brought up just for this single point, which makes it a tie?
Inklings, their funny sneakers, or even their weird suction cup hair/ears.
Alright, consider this a nitpick, but ears? You do realize that in the same picture you've got on screen, the Inkling does have ears, right? Nope, sorry! I have to give this context first.
Long time. It involves slow Darwinian selection. Little tiny survival advantages happening over thousands of generations. Unless, of course, it doesn't. Unless you happen to be one of the very few species that has the ability to forget Darwin altogether and evolve at your own pace. Humans are humans, and we're stuck as humans. The chances of us having some bizarre new species-changing evolution are incredibly slim. But squids, on the other hand, are playing by a completely different set of genetic rules. Just this year, in fact, just a couple weeks ago as we researched this episode, scientists discovered that cephalopods don't follow the normal patterns of protein building with RNA, at least not as strictly as we do.
Alright, you can consider this interjection more of a bookmark, since I want to point out that this article, MatPat is mostly focusing on the headlines. Why do I want you to remember this? Because I actually read that article, and I'll explain more on my point when we get to that in my next interjection.
This may seem like a small difference, but it completely changes the way cephalopods live, breed, and most importantly, evolve. Normally, these kinds of changes would have to be slowly passed down through generation after generation, but RNA editing allows cephalopods like squids to completely skip all that noise. It also puts them as one of the only species to be able to make rapid enough adaptations that you would need to survive a post-apocalyptic world in just a few generations, rather than millions of years. Sad as it is.
Except, no, MatPat, I like it when you do scientific stuff. I really do. Except, now I have to say you really haven't changed from your previous ways, especially from your previous videos. The only difference is instead of turning one of my favorite video game characters into a villain, you're misleading your audience by completely foregoing information from the same source that you're using to back up your points. And I quote, "When the scientists studied octopuses, squid, and cuttlefish, they found that these species had retained those vast swaths of genetic information at the expense of making the small changes that felicitate evolution."
Very few species that has the ability to forget Darwin altogether and evolve at your own pace.
In layman's terms, these creatures' genes barely change as they get passed down from generation to generation, meaning that the DNA mutations that are needed to evolution is limited and actually slows down their evolutionary process. So following your reference, these squids wouldn't be able to evolve in the short amount of time between that they crawled on the land and the events of the game Splatoon, which would be about 2,000 years. And in case you think that this is the only article that goes for this, I found an article that was listed on the same day that says this in it, and I'll link it in the description below. Once again, RNA editing may allow them to create new proteins, but that doesn't mean they get to evolve quickly. And for the love of Holy Cthulhu, do you not understand the basics of evolution and basic reading? I swear, MatPat! I swear! Oh, you really shouldn't swear. I mean, your mom might be watching. So, I guess that means it's my turn to do final thoughts. Ooh, I've always wanted to do one of these. Well, yeah, MatPat this was bad. In a sense, I mean, I learned more about RNA editing from you, but at the same time, I mean, this is bad, and I mean, really bad. I mean, I'm not foaming at the mouth like Skull is. Wow, he doesn't even have a mouth. How's that even possible? Well, anyway, this was a bad video. I mean, from the fact that MatPat completely ignores the lore of the game yet is willing to use gameplay to help prove his point, to the fact that he couldn't be bothered to read the articles he used to help prove his theory. So, yeah, Skull's being committed, so how does he usually end these things?
Oh, he usually gets stopped by me.
Huh. Talking Space Goat. Neat!
With 7 generations of games and 805 total Pokemon before even including Mega Evolutions and Alola forms, it's easy to assume that the creators of these games are just mindlessly pumping out new designs to fill their roster of merchandisable plushies. And looking at some of the creative decisions they've made, you might be justified in thinking that.
So this doesn't really have much to do with the theory itself, but I want to tear this statement down a little bit. First off, I'm surprised you of all people, MatPat, would be using Jinx as a point in this regard, cause he already made a theory debunking this. Actually, I take that back. He made 2 videos about the subject. While the first was inconclusive with his standards, the second one had him saying this.
So is Jinx racist? I feel 100% confident saying no. Like most other Pokemon, her origins harken back to Japanese folklore. In the end, the moral of the story is this. People can make a fuss and then wait 12 years for an online web series to find the answers for them, or they can just do a little research before flipping out.
Now, I find this really suspect, since you're saying that the creators are mindlessly pumping out these designs when you yourself have done the research and saying that Jinx is justified and has a lot of inspiration behind it. And yes, I realize that those videos are about 6 years old at this point in time, but MatPat does like to reference a lot of his old theories in videos. Hey, I can completely understand if a person can change their opinion on something, but he proved that there was more to Jinx than just what he's saying here. So, in my eyes, this is really weird to bring up.
In a time when gamers are more accepting than ever to play different characters, Overwatch embraces diversity. While the characters in TF2 may be from all across the world, outside of the Demo Man and maybe the Pyro, they're all white males.
Well, never mind. I think I found the reason. Let's just throw this out the window then. Goodbye.
Oi, stop throwing your trash.
Honey, I can't find my keys. Oh, wait, here they are. Oh, never mind. It was just a cleft key. I'm still missing those keys. Other dishonorable mentions, Doug Trio with Crappy Weaves, Living Sandcastle, and Pedo Bear, who, if the design didn't already clue you in that they were phoning it in, has the name Beware. Beware.
The designs are essentially subpar or bad since he's using the terms phoned it in. I mean, fine, if you want to say that due to your own personal taste, but I wouldn't say these Pokemon are lazy in concept. But what's even the point of this? I understand that this is more of a joke and such, but you could literally cut this out of the video and nothing would be lost. I realize that MatPat's gotten into filler territory a lot in the past, and has actually gotten worse with it.
Last month I went to a YouTube event in New York where Jacksepticeye and I happened to win a taco challenge judged by the world.
Damn tacos. But this has nothing to do with the actual video itself, other than, you know, it's Pokemon that he's talking about. Even then, I could argue that the designs do have thought behind them. Oh, mainly because he says this.
Some, maybe a bit phoned in, others demonstrate that a lot of thought actually went into these designs and backstory.
Then in place, there isn't a lot of thought for the design of the Pokemon you decide to bring up. But Pokemon like Klefki, Alolan and Doug Trio, and Beware, there are a lot of thought and lore behind them if you're willing to look. Klefki especially, since it's a reference to superstition of fairies of faithful. Like how fairies are said to steal small objects like keys and shoes, or how it's based upon the superstition of carrying iron to ward off mischief from fey creatures. Why not? It is a steel type and it can actually hurt other fairies. Alolan Doug Trio holds a reference to Pele's hair, which is a thing you can find in Hawaiian volcanoes. You know, the location that Alola is based off of. Hell, even Beware has elements to it being based off of Red Panda and off the professional wrestling submission of Bear Hugs, which ties into its typing. I'm not saying you can't call the designs lazy or such, but MatPat's talking about the backstory of these creatures and where they came from inspirational wise. Yeah, that kind of raises a red flag.
Some, maybe a bit phoned in, others demonstrate that a lot of thought actually went into these designs and backstory. Case in point, the Alolan Pokedex entry for Donald Trump. I mean, Young Goose. You can tell the difference because Yungoos's hair looks more realistic. Anyway, the Pokedex tells us that despite the fact that Yungoos debuted in Generation 7 with the release of Sun and Moon, it's not actually native to the Alolan region. Yungoos did not originally live in Alola, but was imported from another region.
Alright, so while I do have a point against this, I do want to bring up something about the Pokedex and when I talk about it. First off, I don't believe the Pokedex to be a reliable source when it comes to basing arguments off of why a Pokemon does this, or has this ability, or why it's evil, since there are conflicting points in it. One of the biggest would have to be Macargo, whose original entries said that it was as hot as lava, but other entries later would say it was hotter than the sun, which, you know, is kind of stupid, since if you look at the Pokemon, its name, its classification, it's obviously based off magma. Or how about Shedinja, the Pokemon who, if you look in the back of, sucks your soul out. So when I look towards the Pokedex and there being some questionable reasoning to use them to justify things like saying a Pokemon is evil, I find it a bit hard to swallow. Now, when I use the Pokedex in my own arguments, that doesn't mean I acknowledge its credibility. The idea is the Pokedex is incredible, but that doesn't mean you can't use people's own logic when they use the Pokedex against them. Now on to my actual point against MatPat. Since before this video came out, MatPat put out another video basically saying you can't trust the Pokedex. Irony! So I find it really ironic that he's relying on it for this theory, when he just basically, you know, said it was full of lies. I understand that this theory is more lore-based, and that the idea that Rattata adapting to a new species is really solid, especially since it has a real-world parallel to it, as MatPat explains. But it's really strange for MatPat to instantly turn against another theory he made, especially since he's willing to use previous theories to back up his current ones. I mean, look at his Mario theories, his FNAF theories, there's a lot.
Totally pathetic, unreliable.
Yungoos being imported into Alola means that it's technically an invasive species. In real life, an invasive species is any living organism, plant or animal, that's not native to an ecosystem. And while that may not sound all that threatening, approximately 42% of all endangered species on Earth are on those at-risk lists because of an invasive species that wound up in its part of the world.
MatPat, I don't normally get onto you for this since it's a point that I've made before in other videos, but this is a much more egregious case. In your Splatoon theory, you actually gave a hint as to where to find the articles on the squids that you used. You gave the title so I could actually find where that's from. But here, there's nothing!
Absolutely nothing!
Honestly, I could spend the rest of my night looking up sources, but seriously, that's an incredibly random number, and it's not my job to actually look this up, it's yours. You're the one who's presenting it.
Totally pathetic, unreliable.
Brought Yungoos to Alola to eat the Rattata adapted and found a way to survive, which means that now you're left with a huge population of Yungoos that have to eat something else and are gonna find it no matter what. After all, as the Pokedex entry says, with its sharp fangs, it will bite anything. It wanders around in a never-ending search for food, which means someone else is on the chomping block. And you know it's gonna be one of those cute little ones.
Okay, so, nitpick alert, but why would a regular Vulpix be on the chopping block? It's not even native to Alola. I understand it's an example, but it's a pretty bad example. Secondly, if we're talking about food and such, there's plenty of berry trees that Pokemon can eat from. We do have to remember that while Pokemon do have a lot of real-life inspirations, as in the case of Yungoos and the small Asian mongoose, but you can't really rely on that since Pokemon are not exactly the same animals as we have in real life. I mean, you tell me where I can find a dragon in real life and I'll pay you $50. And now, not talking Komodo dragons.
And they come up and they go...
Going back to the food thing I was talking about, since you can catch Yungoos carrying berries in Sun and Moon, there exists the possibility of them being omnivores, meaning that they won't just eat other Pokemon, they'll eat other things. Hell, the Pokedex actually says that they'll eat anything.
Totally pathetic, unreliable.
Then, knowing that Yungoos prefer to hunt close to the ground and only during the day, I eliminated any Pokemon who were active at night or tended to stay in trees. Lastly, there were a ton of bug Pokemon across all of these routes, but bugs have huge populations, and it would be difficult for Yungoos to really damage the overall numbers of those populations, so I didn't really consider them at risk. In the end, I was left with the following list of Pokemon that will, in the near future, be completely wiped out from the islands by the overpopulation of Yungoos and Gumshoes. Slowpoke, Vullaby, Delibird, and brace yourself because here comes some real fan favorites, Igglybuff, Pichu, and Eevee. Every single one of these Pokemon species will be wiped clean from the Alolan Isles unless something is done to combat the Yungoos infestation. That is 6 entire species suddenly gone from an ecosystem. You can bet that's gonna throw some food chains into chaos.
And here's the problem that I hold with this video. MatPat is only using real-world logic with this. And since this is a fact, Pokemon are more intelligent and powerful than real-world animals. And while this can apply to Yungoos, it's at a disadvantage when compared to some of its prey. You see, as many people who are fans of the games will tell you, most of these Pokemon have their own special abilities and can defend themselves in various ways. Yungoos is a Pokemon in and of itself, but that doesn't mean it has the ability to use electricity, psychic powers, or other useful attacks naturally on its own. MatPat is ignoring the fact that Pokemon that could go extinct have the ability to fight back with these abilities to defend themselves. But there's something else. Let's start with something that's really weird that MatPat seems to have ignored. Volibee. You see, this Pokemon doesn't really fit into the requirements that he listed.
Then, knowing that Yungoos prefer to hunt close to the ground and only during the day,
you can only encounter Volibee and an ambush in the mountain area of the first island. Well, unless you count Pokepelago, but I don't. So I don't know why he's counting that one. Actually, that raises another question and chalked this up to poor wording, but
I eliminated any Pokemon who were active at night or tended to stay in trees.
I think he was trying to say that we're only active at night, because all of these Pokemon are active at night. Even then, that's a weird thing to bring up since these Pokemon are apparently on the chopping block that are awake during that time, and MatPat is just assuming that these Pokemon won't defend themselves. Or they're young if we're talking about Pokemon eggs. Delibird can actually manage to be a bit more debatable, due to the timing of MatPat's video, since the Pokemon actually migrates to a different location in Ultra Sun and Moon. Seaward Cave, where there aren't any Yungoos around. And yeah, I'm counting Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon in this, since technically his theory came out on the day after they were released, which, you know, I understand that he was processing this theory so it could get out in time for the Pokemon games, but since he's using Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon footage, I feel like I can bring it up, but not use it as the crutch of my argument. Even if you don't want to count those two games, Delibird do have the ability to fly away, despite them being based off of penguins. Now we've got Eevee, which is a first for Sun and Moon because they're wild Pokemon now, which hasn't really happened in other games. This suggests that the Pokemon is more common than usual, which can also be translated for Igglybuff. You can't find them in the wild in other games, and the same with Pichu. Now, why do I bring this up? Well, we have to consider Alolan forms. You see, creatures don't just adapt overnight. Adaptations take time since they're genetic mutations. This is basic Darwin. Organisms will inherit the mutation over multiple generations, which we can see with Alolan Rattata, because remember, Alola had regular Rattata on their shores before the introduction of Yungoos. And this means that Yungoos had to have been around for long enough for the Rattata specifically to adapt to the Yungoos. And it's reasonable to believe that during this time, the ecosystem of Alola adapted as well. And we do have some real-world examples of ecosystems adapting to deal with invasive species. I mean, there's the Australian dingo, which, while controversial at its time, is a species that has been listed as a pest, but has also been used to control the population of invasive species like feral cats and wild pigs. I find it hard to believe that in all the time it took for Alolan Rattata to become what it is while dealing with this invasive species, it was the only thing that adapted to it. Especially depending on the transition of Rattata adapting, the food supply for Yungoos would be more diversified. Also convenient that MatPat ignores a few other Pokemon that are located on these routes that could potentially be predators of Yungoos. You've got Pokemon like Growlithe, Bagon, Rufflet, Lillipup, and that's just going on the assumption that the predatory Pokemon or territorial Pokemon would act exactly like their real-life counterparts, which is what MatPat is doing, and I'm just going off of his logic here.
Chaos. Luckily, all of them are species that appear elsewhere in the Pokemon world, so no one species would truly be gone forever, or at least not gone forever solely because of Yungoos, because that's not where the story ends. Yungoos is only one of the invasive species brought onto Alola by humans. For example, according to the Dex entry in Pokemon Sun, Grimer was brought in to solve a problem with garbage, developed over time into this form. Besides the difference in color, look at those teeth. The Pokedex entry from Moon would tell us that those are actually, quote, lumps of toxins. If one falls off, lethal poisons leak out. So the second species inserted onto these islands by humans just so happens to contain lethal poisons. And since Grimers are specifically used to treat polluted wastewater, you can bet that those toxic crystals are gonna do a lot of damage to the sea life around Hau'oli City and the Cape of Ula Ula Island.
Okay, I have to question a few things here because, for one, Alomomola can only be found in Booklet Hill. Why are you putting it in this example here? And Magikarp? Really? The most common water-type Pokemon in the world, and I am the universe!
worst!
Also, by your own words, Grammars are used to treat polluted wastewater. Wouldn't that mean that they could potentially eat other Grammars toxins? I mean, I know that sounds gross, but we're talking about a Pokemon who, if the dex is to be believed, is made up of sludge, is willing to eat toxic sludge from factories, and is willing to do some of the most disgusting things. It wouldn't be unreasonable that Grimer would get whatever slime it can, poisonous to eat or not, even if it came from another Grimer or even muck. And this all ignores the adaptation thing I brought up before, ignoring that when Grimer started looking like this, that it might have been a problem. But since there's no sign of that and there are tons of Alola and Grimer, no regular Grimer left in Alola, with no actual pollution going around, heck, there's a recycling center now, one would suggest that there would be a method to stop this, otherwise we would have seen already a huge change in the ecosystem while Alola and Grimer were starting to appear and actually have these little teeth.
Then there's Makuhita, also brought into the region by humans. Since these guys train themselves by slamming their bodies into trees, the plant life around Route 2 is absolutely gonna suffer under his body slams. That in turn affects the nesting sites for birds found there like Spearow. And lastly, perhaps
even though we have Pokemon that will ambush you in a tree if you got close. Oh, and Makuhita is a fighting type. You know, the type that's weak to flying type Pokemon. The moment that Makuhita attacks a tree with a Spearow on it, it's gonna be attacked and knocked out.
Run, fat boy, run!
The single biggest threat to the islands, Meowth.
Meow, that's right.
Yet again, the Pokedex tells us this Pokemon was not originally found in Alola. Human actions caused a surge in their numbers and they went feral. Honestly, it's another story. Invasion in Alola, meanwhile, means even more likelihood that bird Pokemon start diminishing in number. Absolutely putting Pikipek on the menu, and
once again, I bring up the argument that Pokemon can fight back, but let's focus on Pikipek, which, you know, it's a Pokemon that's all over Alola and wouldn't necessarily be extinct because of Alola and Meowth, who's only located on 2 islands, and only one location in one of them. Even then, Pikipek can actually learn fighting moves naturally, which can protect it from Pokemon like Alola, Meowth, and Yungoos, both of which are weak to fighting attacks. And while this can apply to other birds, you gotta remember one other thing. Spearow, Delibird, and Vullaby can be found in locations where Meowth can't. Yes, you can say that Meowth could migrate, but I can easily say the same thing about these Pokemon, and that's not taking into account that there are fighting Pokemon that can potentially fight against the invasion of Alola and Meowth. Mankey, Crabrawler, Makuhita, or how about Pokemon like Growlithe, Bagon, and etc. Not so much over food, but territorial issues here.
Since it shares some routes with Yungoos, basically ensuring the disappearance of Pichu.
You know, you are forgetting a fundamental thing right here. While this does sound like I'm making a broken record, I want to go more in depth with this. Pichu can defend itself with electricity. In fact, this falls in line with actual natural defenses that prey can use, much like how some animals can create a poison, or animals that resemble poisonous animals that act as a deterrent to predators. This is something that MatPat never goes into. He just assumes that the Pokemon he thinks are prey can't do anything to fight back. And that's pretty much the video. Honestly, I don't have much more to say than I already have. I understand that I'm probably spinning my wheels with this, but as I said in previous videos, I just like doing it for fun nowadays. Yeah, I'm covering game theory again, and before people get on my case, I was already working on my last commentary when this theory was shoved in my face by several people on Twitter, Discord, and even people who were getting new to my channel as of late. Hey people, how you doing?
Get off the stage!
Alright, so before we actually begin, I need to pick apart some words. First, I want to draw attention to a part of MatPat's pinned comment, which I do admit was interesting to say the least, but what's interesting even more is this line. There were a few facts that this one that I either forgot to double check because I assumed I knew them off the top of my head, or I could have explained better. And this is interesting because there was another comment that he posted saying, I checked it with 2 other people who know Persona really well. Mother's Basement and my personal friend who recommended the theory in the first place. They checked both the script before I recorded it and final video. Sometimes people just overlook things.
Nasty.
Yeah, these are kind of conflicting since you're saying that you didn't double check, but in this comment you're saying that 2 people double checked your work. I understand that people can make mistakes, but it really seems odd that these 2 people who are huge fans of Persona yet apparently don't know the difference between Margaret and Elizabeth, especially since they're both integral to their respective games' social link systems. I don't know, it feels like passing the buck, and we'll be getting to the Elizabeth segment when we get to it, but if there's nothing else, then
That only prompted a lot of backlash of people saying he doesn't acknowledge criticism. So I tried addressing negativity in a public, but people criticized me for doing that too, saying that I was bad at taking criticism because I did that. It often feels like a lose-lose situation.
Like, is any of this for real? Or not?
Oh my god! This is a non sequitur!
MatPat, Do you realize that people took issue with how you address criticism? I mean, look at this thumbnail, reacting to the haters, and how you react without the entire live stream.
Then not all the rest of the videos we're gonna watch today are mean, you guys.
Alright. Oh, and I'd be remiss if I didn't bring this up.
Not the haters! Ah, the haters!
There it is, there was the scream.
Nothing weird, nothing strange going on. I just want to talk to you. Come on.
A fan base that I have no doubt is sure to hate whatever I say in this episode, regardless of how much research I do, poking holes in the theory as a result of that aforementioned contradictory lore.
Say some gangster is dissing your fly girl. You just give him one of these.
You never see it come back. You see that my mind is
This opening itself. I mean, I had to go back a little to the criticism thing, because not only are you agitating the fans' persona, but you're also creating a shield to block any criticism while doing this. While I don't care for your jokes and such, there was a lot of potential for joke material here with Persona 4. But nope, you essentially decided to do this! Look, I understand where you're coming from, but right out of the gate, you are being overly defensive and belittling the people who are fans of the franchise. It almost feels like a self-fulfilling prophecy.
It's also a franchise with enemies that look like this, or this, where teenagers unleash their powers by doing this. Just know that the YouTube monetization bots are gonna be all over this episode. So the bots are gonna hate it, the fans are gonna hate it, and the people who don't know the series probably didn't click on this thing in the first place. Which leads to perhaps the biggest question about today's episode. Not so much what happened to use Shadow in Persona 4, but why the did I choose to do this episode?
Actually, the better question is why you chose to even use those images in the first place, MatPat. I mean, if you're so worried about this monetization thing, you didn't need to put them in there. I mean, the theory has nothing to do with it. I get you're going for a joke here, but it's kind of stupid that you put them in here when you're worried about putting them in here.
Nothing weird, nothing strange going on. I just want to talk to you. Come on.
A recap for those of you who haven't played Persona 4. Or, honestly, those of you who've forgotten all the details because, like I said, it has been a decade. Sorry, I don't mean to rub it in or anything. Time affects me too, you know.
Bad idea. Oh, you guys have no idea how funny that is, hearing that.
I'm a brave boy.
Who I henceforth deem the Scooby Gang.
Not a brave enough boy for this!
Now, all the main characters in the game go through this process. And I do mean everyone. Even Teddy, who we learned through his social link was himself a shadow when all of this started.
I was just a shadow in that world.
He eventually faces a shadow version of himself and gains a persona of his own. Everyone goes through this process. Everyone, except for the fearless leader of the group, you. You gets himself a persona. In fact, he gets his first, but his just shows up right before the tutorial fight where he battles some generic enemies. He just hears a voice telling him to call forth what is within. And he gets his persona without ever having to fight a stupid-looking boss. Throughout the entirety of the game, we never actually meet Yu's shadow. And that sent my theorist sense a tingling. It's just such an odd pattern to break. Everyone else needs to meet and accept their shadow in order to gain a persona, but you, the main character of the game, completely neglects this part of the process. But
we've seen you, Shadow. I mean, there's one in the fighting games, and there's one in the anime. We see a shadow, but to be fair, I'm going to focus on the main line of the games for this. Okay, I know that later he brings up counter-arguments here for how people debunk this theory. Yu's power was immediately awakened after shaking hands with...
Can I touch your hand?
And in fact, if we look towards other parts in the series, we can see that a lot of people have their personas already awakened without ever having to deal with their shadow. Persona 3's cast never had to deal with their own personal shadows. They were able to get their personas. I mean, Persona 5's cast never had to deal with their own personal shadows, with the exception of Futaba, who actually had to accept her shadow, much like how Persona 4's cast does. So we know there are multiple ways to access your persona, not just confronting your shadow self.
I'm here today to say that it's been staring us in the face the entire game. That's right. What I'm proposing is that Teddy, sweet, lovable, cuddly, Humpty Dumpty-esque Teddy, is secretly Yu's former Shadow. Now, that at first might seem like me trying to put together pieces that don't really belong to try and retrofit an answer. We have one character who, for no apparent reason, is missing a shadow.
Can I touch your hand?
Actually, no! As already demonstrated, persona can be manifested in different ways. As I've talked about with last time with how Futaba was able to get hers by actually accepting her shadow, Persona 4's You can also be the same way. As we look towards Persona 2, Philemon actually endowed a lot of the people in the game with persona. And the same thing happened to you in Persona 4, where Izanami gave him the gift. It's completely possible for that.
We have another character who was a former Shadow and has himself a mysterious backstory that he just so happens to not remember.
Teddy isn't a former Shadow, he's a Shadow through and through. He just so happens to have his own human identity that allows him to leave the Midnight Channel area. We see this happen in the game since when he disappears, he loses human form and is stuck in his bear form. Secondly, see my last point, Yu's persona was already tamed and awakened for him to use.
I'm a brave boy.
Add the two together, stir well, and boom, you got—
Not a brave enough boy for this!
You can reject everyone except for Teddy. It is impossible to become the world's savior without Teddy's support. The game literally won't allow it to happen. There is no separating the two. As Tom Cruise said,
"You complete me."
Almost like a shadow and its own.
Except that goes against everything we know about tamed shadows. Teddy doesn't get to become your persona.
I mean, this kind of is an outlier. If we were to accept this theory to be true, then where did Izanagi come from? Is Teddy a part of that? Was he broken off? You kind of had to prove that if that's the case. And even then, just because you point out to an outlier, that doesn't mean that, hey, that's not the case for the other outliers that I've already explained. He could have just been given the persona. He could have been awakened to it. And considering the fact that we see Adachi have like a similar persona, heck, it's called Izanagi as well, then it's more to the point that they were possibly given these personas.
But that's not all. One part of the game that often goes overlooked is the Velvet Room, a place that exists between consciousness and subconsciousness, where Hugh meets the creepy-looking Igor and his assistant Elizabeth. Or honestly, those of you who've forgotten all the details because, like I said, it has been a decade. Sorry, I don't mean to rub it in or anything.
Well, that's just embarrassing.
You know, this is one of the reasons why people think that you don't play the games you're covering. The reasoning is that with you getting Margaret's name wrong, and as I'll demonstrate for the rest of this video, there are other factors that line up with this belief that you don't play the games that you cover.
I played the first Ace Attorney game, I did a theory about it, and then the fan base just ripped me apart because they're like, well, in episode 4 of the series, you know, everything you say is proven true, and of course he's villainous and this and that. Like, I didn't know.
So I'm going to acknowledge that this might be a bit of a non sequitur, but it is going to be proving my point on a few things I'm about to elaborate on. But in the case of the Ace Attorney video, first of all, it's game 4 where you're talking about. And no, not everything you said comes to light. What is brought up to light is that Phoenix Wright was disbarred for using illegal evidence that was proven to be falsified. In your theory, you claim that you played the first game. However, if you did, you would realize that evidence law in Ace Attorney doesn't work like you claimed it did. Case 5 proves that, and evidence law for it actually is doing that. I'll put a link in the description if you want to read the evidence law, because it has a lot more different than what our real world law is, and it does really negate a lot of MatPat's theory. But my point is, if you actually did play the game, you would know this fact. So either you didn't actually play the game, or you're admitting the evidence that actually proves that your information is wrong about the theory. Either way, you're kind of being disingenuous here. And now, back to our featured program! Hooray! Margaret is a prominent character in Persona 4. She's a social link and a character you need to interact with in order to get stronger personas. And she's even a boss character. A secret boss that you need to unlock, but still. And while she has similar design elements with Elizabeth, it's not hard to tell the two apart. Especially since Elizabeth doesn't even show up in the game. And I wouldn't stress this, but apparently there were 2 people who checked MatPat's script and they should have caught this too if they were huge fans of Persona like your comment suggests. So either y'all are extremely fake as fans of Persona, MatPat is passing the buck, or you're lying to your audience here. I'm sure there are other reasons for this, but it's just something I have to consider. Look, I realize that this is the harshest criticism I've given to MatPat, considering while this doesn't disprove anything in your theory, what it does show is that you're not paying attention to the game, and quite possibly not even played the game.
To do things like fuse personas and get long-winded lectures about the game's themes. During our first visit to this shagadelic ride, we learned that it's a place that's only accessible to those who've received a special invitation. quote from the game,
"Only those who are bound by a contract may enter."
And in Persona 4, the only people able to enter this room throughout the entirety of the game are you, Igor, and Igor's assistant. We never once see anyone else enter the Velvet Room.
When Igor says the line that you mentioned earlier, right after that he says you doesn't have a contract.
It is a room that only those who are bound by a contract may enter. It may be that such a fate awaits you in the near future.
So, you doesn't have a contract, but he's able to enter the Velvet Room. Hell, Igor says this.
In the coming days, you will enter into a contract of some sort, after which you will return here.
So, obviously, if you didn't have a contract at the beginning of the game, by your logic, he shouldn't have been able to enter into the Velvet Room in the first place. Funny how you seem to ignore this little line that's in the same cutscene. Then again...
No one, at least, except for Teddy. He seems to just stumble into it, almost as if completely by accident. And there, he and you just sit around and have a conversation.
Unless he was summoned there, you know what Igor tells you that he does?
It seems the words in your memory weren't the only things you summoned here.
In fact, let's go back a bit. Igor says that the room is a place where egos can be nurtured.
This is a room for guests who have an ego that can be nurtured. Shadows, mere fragments broken off from the ego, have no place here.
This means anyone with an ego.
Now remember, Teddy is a being who started off as a shadow and seems to have no real history before humans entered the TV realm. He has no connections to Igor and his contract, so it makes absolutely zero sense that he'd be able to enter the Velvet Room when no one else can. That is, unless you consider that there's something more to his identity.
I only summoned you here that we might say our farewells. I am rather surprised, though. I did not expect your friends to follow you here. It seems the power of the wild card within you has influenced them as well.
My name is Igor. I am the master of the Velvet Room.
I am Lavenza, a resident of this place as well. We have been waiting for all of you. Velvet Room?
Remember, shadows are a part of the original person, the parts of themselves that they don't want to confront. If Teddy is you's shadow, that means that Teddy literally is you, or at least a part of you. Therefore, he too would be bound by the same contract that you's under, and thus able to get inside the Velvet Room. And if that wasn't enough, what's even more interesting is that this happens at a point in the game when Teddy is beginning to question the very nature of his own identity. Coincidence? I think not.
MatPat, you already acknowledged that personas are tamed shadows in this video.
Just so we're clear, a persona is just like a shadow. It's a manifestation of a person's inner thoughts, but a persona is actually tamed and trained.
Personas and shadows are the same thing. That's why you're able to fight them in the first place. But sometimes, humans with special awareness can tame their shadows. Those are persona users.
And a person's shadow and persona are one and the same. Yet you're pushing this theory. Yeesh, this is exactly like the Ace Attorney video where you show one thing that contradicts your entire theory. Especially since Yu's persona is Izanagi. He already had his shadow tamed, or awakened because of Izanami. And while yes, Teddy isn't what you would call a regular shadow since he has a shadow self and a persona, you're also forgetting that he has a human form, which looks nothing like you. The one trait that all shadow selves have is that they have yellow eyes, something that Teddy does not have.
The thing that Teddy says to you upon entering the Velvet Room is,
I've been thinking all this time who I really am.
Oh really? Maybe the answer is staring you quite literally in the face.
Well, I could say the same to you. He answers his own question in that scene.
I've been thinking all this time about who I really am, but I couldn't find the answer. I was no one from the start. Humans live in the other world, and shadows live in this world. From the beginning, that's all there was to it. I was just a shadow in that world. Shadows can't stay in the human world. They aren't allowed. One day, a shadow living in that world awakened to human emotions. But humans and shadows are completely different entities.
Now, just to address a counter-argument that's probably already coming, other people enter the Velvet Room in other Persona games. Minato in 3, and pretty much everyone in 2 as just some examples. But remember, the Velvet Room that we see in Persona 4 is unique. It looks like the interior of a limousine, making it physically distinct from the booth-like appearance of the Velvet Room from earlier Persona games.
Have you even touched the other Persona games? The Velvet Room manifests itself in different forms in all games. In the first game, we had its simple blue and carpeted draped rooms. In Persona 2, we had more of a club feeling going on with the design. Persona 3 was an elevator. And Persona 5 is a prison! You could say the first two are similar, but at the same time, those two games are more connected.
Igor meets you for the first time and refers to this place being off limits to anyone who hasn't entered into a contract with him.
Which at this point in the game, you hasn't.
It is a room that only those who are bound by a contract may enter. It may be that such a fate awaits you in the near future. In the coming days, you will enter into a contract of some sort, after which you will return here.
Sorry, I don't mean to rub it in or anything. He's referring to that specific place, that specific Velvet Room with the limousine appearance. Notice how none of the other Velvet Rooms have that sort of contractual stipulation. So the rules of one room in a past game shouldn't necessarily apply to the way that Persona 4's room chooses to operate.
It is a room that only those who are bound by a contract may enter.
It is a room that only those who are bound by a contract may enter.
Only those who have signed the contract can enter this place.
He's referring to that specific place.
Warning! Warning! Bullshitter alert!
You know, at this point, I'm willing to say you haven't played any of the Persona games.
Counter-argument number 2. Teddy isn't Yu's shadow because Yu doesn't have a shadow. Yu is special. He's the chosen one. And I could totally see why you might think that. Over the course of the game, we learn that not just anyone can enter the TV world. As we find out, the only way that people can enter the Midnight Channel is by going with someone who's been granted this special gift from the gods.
Actually, you just need a persona. Hell, the game tells you this since when Teddy goes missing, the others actually search the TV world without you.
Rise and the others are checking inside the TV to see if he's gone back to the other side.
Yu just so happens to possess the gift. So maybe the fact that Yu has the god's blessing explains why all his friends encounter their shadow in the TV world, while he never has to. It's an explanation that would make sense if we didn't have evidence directly to the contrary. You see, it's revealed that only 3 people have received the TV gift. Yu is one. The other 2 are Namatame and Adachi, the villains of the story responsible for throwing innocent victims into the TV world. And it's here that the explanation of Yu is special doesn't hold up, because both Namatame and Adachi have the gift, but both still have shadows who appear in the TV land. Namatame and Adachi both merge with their shadows when you fight them as bosses.
You see, this is a point I was referring to earlier. You see, these aren't Namatame and Adachi's shadows respectively. This right here is Kuino Sagiri, and I know I'm probably butchering that, but I don't care, who has many shadows merging with Namatame. We see this happen in the game.
His powers are attracting more and more shadows to him!
Look at him! He's merging with the shadows!
The game outright shows you this! And for Adachi, he was absorbed into Amino Sagiri.
All humans will become shadows, and I shall descend upon the united world as the master of order.
Guys, this isn't Adachi! It's someone completely different!
Both this world and yours will soon be enclosed in a fog that never lifts. It will be the peaceful world that mankind has longed for.
Who are you?
I am Amino Sagiri, one who rules the fog, one awakened by man's desires.
These are not their shadows, so this argument does not work.
Nothing weird, nothing strange going on. Just want to talk to you. Come on.
Yu's arcana at the top of the game is the Fool, which represents innocence, divine inspiration, madness, freedom, spontaneity, inexperience, chaos, and creativity. In nearly every regard, he's the embodiment of a blank slate. Now, if the player reaches the true end, Yu's persona ascends to the World arcana, a representation of totality. Look look at Teddy's arcana, the star, which is associated with hope, self-confidence, faith, altruism, luck, generosity, peace, and joy. These match exactly with what we know about Teddy. He's all about cheering people on, getting along with others. But in addition to matching Teddy's personalities, these are the exact traits that Yu has to adopt for himself in his evolution from spontaneous and experienced fool to hero of the world.
Your point about the star arcana is kind of irrelevant here. You can easily say that for other arcana that can fit into the world's description, since the world is associated with social links. That's kind of the purpose of the game. The magician has elements that align itself with self-confidence, fortune has luck, temperance has harmony, and the sun has joy and optimism, and etc. When you say words like totality, that doesn't just mean good aspects of just Teddy, it means the whole thing, and that's the point. That's why the world arcana in Persona represents the social links, meaning all of them, not just Teddy's.
Now, let me start by saying that I was mulling on this topic for quite a while. Didn't help that I was taking finals at the same time. Yes, MatPat. At this point, it's a joke and a meme on my channel, and I'll rise up to the challenge to debunk any of his theories. I've gotten people telling me that I'm beating a dead horse, that I shouldn't do this, and that MatPat won't change at this point. Well, to that I say, you're absolutely right. That being said, while some projects are in the works to diversify my content, I am under the belief that if something comes up and I can add to the conversation, I will do it. In addition, I actually enjoy debunking MatPat and other theories when I can. It's like a game of darts for me at this point. It's just a way to enjoy myself as I practice deductive skills, researching, and practicing my editing skills so I can make much more enjoyable content for you all. Yeah, it's not perfect, but I try. You can disagree all you like, and that's fine. I'm just giving you my thoughts on that. That being said, today's video is a little bit different. For a while, I was on the fence about doing this video and making it, but since then I've had quite a number of people asking me to give my thoughts on this, so I decided to give my initial reaction on Twitter a few weeks back. And this is something that I have to say now. 140 or so characters is not adequate enough to say what I want to say. I say this because when I point out a specific quote in this 4 minutes of MatPat's first video, and gave my thoughts on that and that alone, someone took that to mean I was applying that to the entirety of his 4-minute speech. And they opened up by blatantly insulting me, and then decided to debunk me, even though they were making their own assumption on my opinion on the matter. I won't name that person because I have some respect for them, and I do not wish for people to go after them. I had hoped they'd have some form of respect for me and give me some common courtesy since we do have Skype contacts with each other, and they could have easily asked me about this, but apparently not so. Yes, I am a little bit salty on it, but who cares? But in order to not have a repeat on that, let me say this. I agree with what MatPat says on his points about people making assumptions with his giving Undertale to the Pope video. It was kind of stupid that people made the assumption about what he was talking about when there were clear evidence against that. Heck, I did make a short video where, yes, I did make fun of MatPat for thinking that his theory on Sans' nest had strong evidence, but in that same video, I applauded MatPat for going with a gift that was given to the Pope. Is it practical? Hell no! But it's a symbolic gift, something that I understood quickly. That being said, I still do have issues with his video, at least not with the theory, but rather with the 4-minute detour that he takes at the beginning of said video. Now, while I'm not above making jokes in this matter, this video will be slightly different, as I already said. You can expect some humor, but I need to be serious here so people don't twist my words into something I'm not saying. With that out of the way, let's begin.
I gotta be honest with you, I'm scared of this game. So before we begin today's episode, I need to take a moment to level with you all, because it's time I pull back the curtain of the show a bit and address a couple things. Now don't get me wrong, I love this game. I really do, but doing episodes on Undertale have been some of the worst experiences that I've had in the 6 years of doing this show.
Going back to something I said on Twitter where I said I thought this was disingenuous, right off the bat I want to point this out. The background music. Now, you can probably consider this to be a nitpick, but I want to say this as it will play throughout the entire segment. There's nothing wrong with playing background music, mind you, but this sad piano music that you hear throughout the entire thing is giving me a bad vibe, and I get it. I get he's trying to be serious, but as I said on Twitter, I got the feeling that this was going to be used for something more. and this was one of the reasons why. The music sets the tone and doesn't help that it's a subconscious and emotional impact on the audience since it subtly makes you want to feel sympathetic. It's a tactic used in basic music theory and also presentations. Heck, this is how music works in movies too. But that's just a thought, and consider it to be null and void, I guess, or whatever. Back to the vid.
The first was Sans' Nest, a theory I was so excited to share with you. In fact, it was one of, if not my favorite episode that we had done of game theory to date, because it allowed me an opportunity to talk about one of my favorite franchises growing up, Earthbound, as well as one of my favorite modern franchises of UnderTail. And it was a fun episode. Now, don't get me wrong, did I in any way think that this was canon lore to the series? No. Of course not. I didn't think that Sans is actually Nest, but at the end of the day, these are theories meant to get you to think about things from a different perspective. And let's be honest here, there are a lot of similarities between Earthbound and UnderTail, okay? From visual design, to actual sound effects, to even the timelines of the games.
Oh boy, there's a lot to unpack here. It's perfectly fine if you want to connect the two games, yes, MatPat. You're right that the games do have a lot of similarities. But what I take umbrage with is the fact that you're willing to ignore facts. You're willing to make up connections based on the loosest of items, and you're willing to jump to conclusions based on the previous 2 points. Now, that wouldn't be so bad if you're trying to make a more comedic video, as you have demonstrated in the past. Hello, Mario is communist. But even if you want to get people to think from a different perspective, from where I'm standing, you're making it out to be acceptable that people should just ignore facts and context just so it can fit a narrative that you want. And I know someone in the comments is going to be like, but it's only a game. That does not matter. MatPat is trying to get people to think this way, and it's a dangerous way of thinking that I've seen spreading across this website. I'm not saying the entire blame is on MatPat, far from it, but he's certainly not helping in the matter by spreading it. I'd also like to point out that this really reeks of it's just a theory defense. You're still defending the video you made, despite all the evidence that you brought to the table was shaky at best. Just because it's a theory, that doesn't mean it's exempt from criticism. In fact, considering that it is a theory, it should be criticized more. As someone who claims to be man wanting to promote science and critical thinking, MatPat, you're severely lacking in the capacity to realize that a theory is meant to be tested and scrutinized. You bring up a hypothesis, you test it out to see if it's true, and your video wasn't. And I'm not done. You claimed to be a big fan of the 2 series at the time, but many people in my comments section of my video have pointed out to me you couldn't be bothered to get the Underground's name right, and continue to call it Underworld throughout the entire video. This is something that could have easily been fact-checked with a simple Google search. I'm just saying, for someone who claims to be a huge fan of these games, you got a lot of stuff that was vital to your theory wrong, or at the very least came off with it as you didn't pay attention to the games. Snow cone me, boy!
But the overwhelming negativity and ridicule that that video got was just crushing. It sucked, man.
Overwhelming negativity? What? Yes, it was a bad theory, but from where I can see the likes and dislikes on the video, you still managed to get an overwhelming amount of likes. And yes, people, I will show that I dislike the theory. It does not detract from my overall points. Let's consider the percentage of the dislikes here. MatPat has a total of 200,000 likes/dislikes as of scripting this video. Now if we take that number and divide by the number of dislikes, out of the total percentage, he got 9% of dislikes. And I'm rounding up that number to be generous. Now, I'm well aware someone will say, well, he's not talking about the likes or dislikes, he's talking about comments, videos, and Reddit posts. Well, if that were the case, then I can't find the hate on your video. Heck, because of this video, you've gotten nothing but support. Hell, people are starting to say that this was a good theory, and frankly, I'm in disagreement. And I'm not the only one who has issues with it and have proven you to be wrong. Well, here's the thing, if MatPat had gotten so much flack for this, then why does he not prove it? Show posts and people talking negatively about you, and you're asking people to take your word on the matter. That's not how evidence works. You can claim that I'm victim blaming here, but I'm asking for evidence of this hate. I'm asking for people to actually back up what they're saying. That's how claims work. And since MatPat's channel is based around that, it should be a no-brainer to do that. But he doesn't.
And don't get me wrong, I have gotten used to dealing with internet hate over the years. I've gotten through the Sonic is Slow controversy, I've had literal petitions written to remove me from the internet for slandering Mario's name by calling him a sociopath, but this one This one hurt.
And here's another big issue I have, and it goes back to the previous point I just made. MatPat, you're completely misinterpreting the petition that you just showed. I've read the petition. I've seen what it wants. I'll even link it in the description. That petition never asks you to be ousted from the internet. All it asks is for you to admit you're wrong on the Mario's mental theory. Yeah, the petition is stupid, but most internet petitions are. Hell, the Harambe Pokemon petition had more signatures than this petition that you showed on screen. If there was a petition to get MatPat off the internet, I haven't found it. Not that I'm the one who's supposed to be presenting your case, Matthew. If there's a petition that does exactly say that, why not present that? Instead, what you're doing here is more manipulation and misrepresenting something that anyone with a pause button and a chance to actually take more than 3 minutes to look online will be able to figure out what you're doing is wrong.
But it was nothing compared to the next time I talked about UnderFail on the channel, when I was selected for the honor of meeting Pope Francis as one of the first 10 digital creators to introduce him to the world of online video. And as part of that, we were expected to give him a gift. So I gave him a copy of UnderTale and then made a video talking about that. One, because it was such a huge honor for me, but two, because I was excited to share it with you. This was our achievement as a theorist community, as gamers, as online digital creators, and people who love online things. And the hate that video received in the first week. I mean, this was a video where I specifically talk about accepting others and saying no to hating other groups of people, and it got hate.
Once again, going to the like bar, oh look, nearly similar numbers to the previous video. And once again, Matt, you're claiming that you got hate. Prove it. Now, I've already said that I agree that people who didn't bother to actually look at the conversation you had with the Pope are in the wrong. But this was something that you could have easily taken care of, MatPat. You could have put an annotation, a link, or heck, put a portion of your own speech into the video so that people could exactly see what you were talking about. Or even put a video in the week after discussing the misconceptions about your video. You allowed this to go on for half a year. If you really wanted this hate to be squashed, you could have easily put a stop to it, to the supposed hate you got. And I realized what he's talking about when he did talk to the Pope about it. And as already stated, this should be the third and final time I'll say this so people can get it in their heads. I agree that people should have done their research on this matter before jumping to conclusions. That sounds almost familiar.
Lastly, number 5. I was selected via an application that I submitted for this opportunity as a representative of America, as a representative of gamers, and of online digital creators. I know a lot of people were upset that I was selected, and I'm sorry if you don't like me. But as someone who tries to advocate for science, logic, and critical thought, I did my best to put a good foot forward for all 3 of those different categories.
Look, MatPat, you say that, but your content doesn't really reflect that. With the exception of your FNAF videos up until last week, most of your more recent videos have been ignoring points of evidence. You don't ignore evidence in critical thinking, especially when it's evidence that can debunk you. That's practically a fallacious thinking right there, where you're dodging issues that can wreck your theory instead of tackling them head on. I may have an issue with people claiming that they're the voice of others. I didn't like it with Angry Joe, and I held a lot more respect for him than MatPat. But I'm not the guy who chooses who gets to go to what event. So don't hold the fact that I may not agree with MatPat being a representative of gamers that he shouldn't have applied for the position. He has much right to do so, and frankly, I congratulate him on doing it. And I really can't say much more on that. I can complain about it, but that's basically it. And that's where I'm stopping. Time for my final thoughts. MatPat, I agree that you shouldn't have gotten hate for your videos. That being said, that doesn't mean you're exempt from criticism. And throughout this entire thing, you never once brought up a distinction between hating on you and actually challenging your theory in a reasonable manner. And unfortunately, some of your fans can't tell the difference. How do I know? Because I experience this every once in a while. Now don't take this to mean that I don't get things wrong or I forget points. I do. I try to at least explain myself, and I will admit when I'm wrong when I'm proven wrong. Look, whether or not you believe me, or you don't want to listen to me, that's fine. I'm just using my thoughts here, and I want to be honest. I do believe that MatPat shouldn't have gotten any hate for making any theory. It's a video that he made that he himself admitted that put a lot of effort and care into. Yes, I do think his theory is stupid. And with that, I hope you guys take the time to listen to what I say, and hopefully you can see my side on this.
So anyway, let's go on about game theory. Insert being that I only do game theory videos, even though I haven't done a commentary on the channel in about, I would say maybe a year. So you know what? Screw it!
Hello, Internet. Welcome to Game Theory.
Oh, how nostalgic. You know what else is nostalgic? Skipping the opening fluff of his video since it has nothing to do with what I actually want to talk about.
Oh, you're going too slow. Let me take the wheel.
What is Kirby? Is he hero of Popstar, or is he world-consuming villain? A pink puffball for good, or a fiery god of evil? The games tell us time and again that he's a hero, but can we believe what they're saying?
Yes, as you can imagine, this is another of the most widely successful insert main character is actually evil video. Because that worked out so well for Mario and Phoenix Wright. Sarcasm.
Surprisingly, Kirby lore does have an answer. Over the years, the games have slowly been revealing more and more of what the true nature of Kirby is, and the answers they're starting to give are shocking. No, Kirby is not a hero, but he's also not necessarily evil either.
Which is why you'll spend the majority of this video painting Kirby out to be a villain.
It's my theory that, if you manage to piece together all the clues sprinkled throughout the series, canonically speaking, Kirby is a reincarnated god of destruction.
So, are you saying he's Beerus?
The equivalent of a mindless super weapon related to some of the deadliest and scariest antagonists that have been haunting these games from the very beginning. Sounds crazy, right? We're still talking about Kirby, aren't we? I thought so too at first. But based on in-game lore bits, all of this seems to be what the designers are intending to do with this character.
Oh boy, I sure hope those lore bits aren't ignoring very important context you cherry pick, cause this is saying that the developers are trying to do would be really— you know what's gonna happen. If you didn't, you wouldn't be watching this video right now.
So stick around. At the end of this two-part theory, I don't think you'll ever be able to look at Kirby the same way again. It may seem that Kirby's a hero because he's constantly saving his home dreamland from multiple intergalactic threats, but upon closer inspection, you'll see one common thread across all of his stories. Kirby is the one unleashing the threats in the first place. In Kirby's Adventure, the second game of the series, Kirby is on a quest to restore dreams to dreamland. To do this, we're told that he has to collect pieces of the Star Rod, which was shattered by the evil King Dedede. In truly heroic form, Kirby assembles the shards, defeats Dedede, and Dedede begs him to stop. Literally, it's dragged across the ground as he tries to convince Kirby to stop what he's about to do. But Kirby, who you'll quickly learn is surprisingly stubborn for a pink blob, ignores Dedede and goes through with replacing the Star Rod. But instead of saving everyone's dreams, this one simple act instead summons the true villain of the game, Nightmare, who needed the Star Rod as the last piece to completely conquer Dreamland. In one of gaming's earliest twist endings, Dedede was actually acting as the good guy the entire time. By destroying the Star Rod and giving the pieces to his guardians, our King Penguin here was trying to keep the powerful item out of Nightmare's evil clutches. Kirby, by assembling the rod and bringing it back, unleashes the evil that Dedede had captured and contained.
So right out of the gate, I have issues with your first point, and that's you're ignoring some of the major context, namely the fact that 1, why the hell would Kirby want to trust King Dedede? You yourself already stated this was the second game in the series, and you want to know who the villain was in the first game? King Dedede, where he and several thieves stole all the food in Dreamland as well as stole the sparkling stars, which according to the instruction manual for the first game, are what allow the Dreamlanders to play and work, and without them, they're unable to find food. And you know what Dedede did? He gave them to his strongest henchman to guard. Sound familiar? It's the exact same thing King Dedede does in the second game. Why would Kirby ever think to question, maybe King Dedede is a good reason for this, when he's pulling the exact same thing he did in the first game? If you look at the story in the manual of the second game, you've got this dialogue from the manual.
So, you're up to your old tricks again, eh, Dedede?
Accused Kirby. What are you talking about, young pudgeball? Dedede looked surprised. I thought I'd do everyone a favor by—
No!
Kirby shook his head.
I won't listen to your tricks. What have you done with the Star Rod?
Oh, that old thing? Dedede said nonchalantly. I broke it into several pieces and gave each piece to one of my friends. Secondly, I bring this up since, unlike MatPat here, this actually established something else, namely, Dedede's reputation. And thirdly, this ignores Dedede's actions or lack of actions. Also from the instruction notebook, we're told that without the pleasant dreams, the Dreamlanders are made miserable. If Dedede was really trying to do good, then shouldn't he have tried to inform Dreamlanders about the situation, especially since it would have had a negative effect on them either way? Oh, and considering that Dedede's taking a bubble bath in what could be essentially considered sacred ground for Dreamlanders, and yes, he takes a bubble bath in the Dream Spring, that is clearly showing a lot of disrespect. Would you ever consider listening to someone who's been proven to be a thief, who's done something similar before, someone who's defacing a sacred monument, and someone who didn't bother to say, hey, there's this ancient evil who I'm sealing away so we don't die, to anyone? Too long didn't listen. Thanks for cutting context, MatPat. I'm sure that won't happen again. Sarcasm!
Kirby resorts to violence first and asks questions later. And it gets even worse from here. In Return to Dreamland, it's the exact same plot again. Floating Jellybean Magalore crash lands his ship on Popstar and asks Kirby to help him rebuild. Kirby, of course, obliges. Then, Magalore asks Kirby to go one step further by defeating the four-headed dragon Landia. What reason does he give Kirby for attacking this creature? That it's evil? That it's a threat? He actually doesn't say all that much.
And if you have a pair of working eyeballs, you can clearly see MatPat is clearly blind. It's not like people can infer that this dragon is what caused damage in the first place. If you don't take care of it, it'll just attack me again. That's what the screen is showing. Heck, there's a full cutscene that gives the reason why.
Kirby doesn't need a reason anyway. He just agrees and jumps into action, beating up a dragon that he knows literally nothing about.
He knows that it attacked Malagor and the ship that they were on. Also, can I point out that this is some really stupid logic? I mean, you can make this argument about every video game character who beats up several enemies they know nothing about. Spyro the Dragon beats up and sets people on fire for who knows of nothing about. Yooka-Laylee beats up corporates that they know nothing about. Any RPG where you fight against an endless array of mooks and grunt enemies that you know nothing about. And for Landia takes down Malagor's ship, and Kirby could have easily seen as an act of aggression. Kirby didn't start these fights, the monsters did. And that's actually something that's going to be coming up later in the video too.
Landia drops its prized master crown, and wouldn't you know it, but Magalore is there waiting, eager to snatch it up. The whole time he was misleading Kirby, gaslighting him, expecting our pink puffball to do the dirty work for him, taking a hit out on Landia just so he can swoop in and grab the master crown for himself. Definitely puts him calling Kirby his hero into a whole new context.
I literally have no idea why you bring that up. You're saying Kirby was misled, something that happens in fiction and all the time. The hero gets misled by the villain. Why is this a point?
Again, for a second time, we see Kirby just resorting to violence, hopping directly into action without looking to see what the real facts might be.
First example you give, I already explained why this is dumb, but the second one, how is Kirby supposed to find the other story? In fact, here's something interesting while I was looking this up in order to catch myself. Apparently, you cut even more context, MatPat. You cut the context that Landia attacks the ship that Kirby is on. Gee, it's not like that's a reason to find Landia suspect considering the situation. Heck, you don't even know if Landia is capable of speech at this point or could just be a wild beast. I mean, it's a four-headed dragon. It doesn't really, give the idea of, oh, let's have a cup of coffee and talk.
Speaking of villains who swoop in at the last minute, let's talk Milky Way wishes. When the sun and moon are fighting up in the sky, one civilian speaks up with a solution, Marx. His proposed answer to this literal star war is to summon Nova, a giant space watch that grants wishes, making it basically a nerdier version of Shenron from Dragon Ball. Kirby travels planet to planet to harness each one's star power, making him quite literally an invading alien army to the locals of that area. And after decimating 7 planets worth of creatures, eat your heart out, Samus.
Of course, it wouldn't be a MatPat lore video if he didn't play that card. What card, you might be asking? Well, I'll explain later.
Kirby successfully summons Nova, but before he can make his wish and justify all the damage he just caused across the galaxy, Kirby is betrayed by Marx, who wishes to take over Popstar, meaning that for a third time now, we see a villain taking advantage of our innocent Kirby. Kirby goes on to defeat Marx, but also has to destroy Nova in the process, leaving the universe one step back from where this quest first started, and ultimately invalidating all the bloodshed from all those planets that he just visited.
I love how MatPat ignores the fact that apparently you don't have to kill enemies, save for the bosses. If anything, Kirby going around massacres, it's more to the fact that the player's going on a killing spree. Huh? What was that? In any case, love how MatPat also ignores a few things, like the fact that the sun and moon stopped fighting in order to help Kirby, which actually helps justify Kirby's journey. Again, MatPat is painting a clear picture here. Oh, and that bit about there being less wishes? Yeah, let's just ignore the fact that there's the Access Arc, which in Kirby Planet Roobot, I can't pronounce that correctly. There are more of these comets. And yes, they're comets, damn it. Heck, Stardream's third form resembles that of Nova, so there's a possibility of there being more wish granters out there, which frankly is a bad thing. Yeah, let's just allow a wish granting device to exist. It's not like there are people out there who...
Fourth time, that's really the charm for Kirby and starts to show the problems with his character. In Squeak Squad, Kirby's strawberry shortcake goes missing, and Kirby immediately jumps to the conclusion that it must be the work of King Dedede. No investigation, no evidence, just a pure guess that it's the king. And from there, it's straight to clobbering time.
Where he and several thieves stole all the food in Dreamland, as well as stole the sparkling stars, which according to the instruction manual for the first game, are what allow the Dreamlanders to play and work, and without them, they're unable to find food. Huh. I don't remember those. In any case, do I need to say it? No investigation? How about the fact that Dedede had a prior act of stealing everyone's food?
With Kirby inhaling his way through Dreamland's inhabitants who have nothing to do with the cake. Kirby doesn't even assume that they have anything to do with the cake, and yet he still feels it necessary to destroy them as he goes past. He relishes in it, yipping and yee-hawing as he leaps from one flattened corpse to the next. He has no sense of guilt, no sense of remorse.
Oh yeah, it's not like he ever makes those sounds when he jumps. Also, the players can just jump over the monsters and not kill them. That's the player's choice.
I died already!
Or, in some cases, players' lack of skill.
And this is what I was talking about earlier. You keep applying how everyone is dead and plays like you do. Not everyone's gonna kill every enemy they come across. Also, MatPat plays off as the entirety of Dreamland is affected when this only happens on the way to Dedede's castle. 5 stages, and one of those is the castle itself.
Finally, he gets to the castle where he promptly roughs up the king. Again, a huge amount of violence for some missing strawberry shortcake.
I don't even see the point anymore.
And true to his ask questions later mentality, it's only after Dedede is passed out on the floor thanks to the Kirby beatdown that it suddenly occurs to him, quote, "Of course Dedede doesn't know anything about the cake." A bit late to figure that one out, huh, Kirby?
I mean, is that actually Kirby talking? It could just be the narrator.
It's revealed that the true culprits are the Squeak Squad, mouse-like thieves who stole the cake alongside a mysterious chest from Dedede's castle. Thinking the chest contains his missing dessert, Kirby gives chase and, alongside the Squeak Squad, eventually opens it, which releases yet another brand new evil, this time called Dark Nebula. Once again, an evil entity that was successfully kept trapped until Kirby got involved.
You know, I don't even know how people can find this to be entertaining at this point. Yeah, I know, I'm becoming jaded, but can you really blame me? Obviously, Kirby's involvement had no correlation to this new evil being unleashed. The Squeakers were still going to steal the treasure chest, so obviously they would open it up eventually. Kirby being there doesn't change that, nor should he be involved in that. It's not even, oh, Kirby distracted Dedede and his forces to the chest could be stolen, which, while dumb, isn't something that's even brought up as a possibility.
The series just needs to spice up its general plot structure.
That's what I usually think when I think one of your fans actually believes this stuff.
It's this fourth retelling of the story, though, that's especially revealing when it comes to Kirby's character. Because not only is Kirby creating the problems that he ends up having to solve—
Say what?
In most of these circumstances, he has to be forced to actually take action to clean up his own messes. In Kirby's adventure, when Nightmare appears, it's Dedede who literally has to launch Kirby at him in order to get him to do anything.
Or, you know, help Kirby get to that area while Kirby can float up. It's obviously not fast.
Return to Dreamland, same story. Magolor betrays the team, and Kirby doesn't have a clue what's really going on. I mean, look at his face. It's not until Landia, the dragon you beat all to heck for no apparent reason, picks Kirby up and throws him on his back that Kirby takes any action against Magolor. In Squeak Squad, it's even more telling. We literally just see someone release a galactic evil, and here's Kirby just worried about his cake. In fact, the game makes it very clear that that's the only reason he goes on to fight Dark Nebula. Quote, "The smoke envelops the squeaks and disappears into space. How awful. At this rate, the strawberry shortcake will be lost forever." Even at the end of the game, Kirby, who just saved the universe, only is happy when his cake is returned.
Shock of all shocks, MatPat ignoring context. How dare the hero actually want to get his own personal desire after saving the universe again?
Kirby doesn't act heroically on his own. He just gets pointed in a direction, sometimes good, more often bad, and just destroys mindlessly until the task is done. He's an unfocused weapon of mass destruction, not caring about good or evil or what he's fighting for, just fixated on whatever impulse strikes him in the moment.
It's sad I can point to your first example and prove you're wrong, MatPat. Kirby of his own volition learned that the Dreamlander's dreams weren't happening and went to his own accord to find out what happened. I get you have admitted to foregoing context in order to put out these theories, but this is something that is completely eye-rolling at this point, how you're ignoring several points in your own examples.
Even in a story as absurd as Epic Yarn. Does anyone remember why Kirby decided to fight the evil sorcerer Yin Yarn? It's not because he was going around turning people into yarn creatures like a hero would. It was because Kirby wanted to eat a tomato.
Kirby saw his favorite food, a bright red tomato. But when Kirby tried to eat it, a caped sorcerer appeared. No, That's my magic Metamato. Kirby gulped the Metamato right down. Just then, a white sock around the sorcerer's neck began to glow. Then it sucked Kirby up.
More forgoing contact!
Lately there have been rumors of a caped sorcerer going around.
So, you get onto Kirby for acting irrationally, but when there's only rumors of people being turned into strings, something that hasn't happened before in the Kirbyverse as far as I know, you want him to go charging off. Make up your mind!
Kirby eventually aligns to the side of good, but it's rarely because he chooses to be good. Now compare his actions to those of both DDD and Meta Knight. DDD breaks the Star Rod to protect Dreamland.
After stealing Dreamland's food and power sources, oh, and desecrating a holy location by bathing in it without telling any members of Dreamland of the danger.
The Pandora's box that successfully keeps Dark Nebula contained is housed in DDD's castle for safekeeping. And when the king loses possession of it, Meta Knight is the one who steps in to prevent it from getting opened because the game outright says he knows what's in there. These are heroic characters, purposely putting their lives on the line to defeat evil, even if their methods are sometimes misguided or questionable.
You know, now that I think about it, with the Landia situation, I'm surprised you don't touch on the fact both Meta Knight and DDD are standing right there in the cutscenes. By your own logic, wouldn't they also be responsible for not doing anything until prompted to?
For most villainous, the intent isn't nearly as bad as it might first seem. In Revenge of Meta Knight, his whole goal for conquering Popstar is to make it less lazy. He is literally the Sporticus to Kirby's Robbie Rotten.
What he perceives to be laziness. He's starting a war based on what he sees is a lazy lifestyle. I think that might be going overboard a little bit.
Kirby boards the Hellbird and blows up the entire ship. When the crew decide they want to go down with their captain, Meta Knight outright warns them, "You are about to perish. I'm sorry." That is an exact quote. Again, this is in a Kirby game. And here's Meta Knight saying, "You all are gonna die." Meanwhile, here's Kirby jetting away without a care in the world, and then watches as a ship full of people crash lands into the ocean. He literally watches them die, while keeping that adorable smile on his face.
Meta Knight was starting a war because he perceived something to be lazy. Also, if you want to talk about lines, prepare to die. Yeah, that is good intentions written all over it. I guess cutting out the fact that Meta Knight is starting a war for one of the worst reasons in video games. Also, according to the wiki article to back this up, all but Meta Knight and Sailor Waddle Dee abandoned the Halberd before it crashes. Again, MatPat, do you not actually play these games or even, you know, look at wikis?
We actually get some of the best examples of how he interacts with his fellow creatures in these games, and his personality is not cute. In the game, the premise is that you puzzle battle anyone you come into contact with as you journey your way to the Dream Fountain. So, true to Kirby games, Waddle Dee happens to be your first opponent on easy mode. And here's your interaction with him. Kirby: "Hi Waddle Dee, are you ready?" Waddle Dee: "Can we just walk together? The forest scares me." Kirby: "Sorry, rules are rules." Here is a poor innocent creature scared in the woods, and Kirby responds with, "Too bad I have to beat you in a glorified Candy Crush mod."
Glorified Candy Crush mod. Second, you said it was a puzzle battle game. Why shouldn't Kirby have a bit of a competitive side to him? Apparently trash talk and trying to follow the rules of the game aren't allowed anymore?
What are you doing on computer? Go outside, so beautiful!
That game may not be canon.
Then what was the point of the last minute and a half of your video? If it isn't canon, then it shouldn't have anything to do with your theory. You could have literally pulled that part out of your video and wouldn't have affected the quality or anything. Well, actually it would have, since it would make the theory a bit better and show you're not willing to go on silly tangents and only pad out the runtime. What the hell?
Kirby's Dreamland 3. Now, in past games in the series, you could argue that Kirby was attacking creatures because they were part of DDD's army. It's not the best argument, since relatively few actively attack Kirby, but you could make that case.
So, you're willing to admit this for Kirby, but not Mario? Wow!
That's a double standard. Also, no, if you just stand around and the enemy comes into contact with you, you'll get hurt. One could argue that they are actively trying to hurt you just for being Kirby.
Here, though, Kirby outright sees these creatures getting possessed, taken over by a mysterious dark substance from outer space. He should know that they're innocent, and yet he still chooses to swallow them, slice them in half with cutters, and stab them with swords anyway.
Context has been cut. Again. You know, dark matter appears in Kirby 64, and in that game, when dark matter possessed a character, Kirby had to beat them up in order to free them from possession. Who is to say that the same thing isn't happening here? And it's not like we haven't seen this sort of thing happen in fiction before. And even then, the possessed characters are doing bad things. What, do you want Kirby not to stop them and keep having them do bad things?
Just like Mario breaking the toads who'd been turned into bricks in the first game.
Oh, you son of a...
Even worse, since these creatures still look like Kirby's friends and neighbors. Doesn't matter, Kirby just runs in and tells them to get in his belly. How about all those guardians I mentioned earlier from Milky Way Wishes? They were just there on their planet doing their job, protecting their star fountains, heroes of their respective worlds, but here comes Kirby, a literal alien invader who not so heroically beats them all up.
The sun and moon were fighting. Kirby wasn't given a choice. Also, heroes? Some of these bosses are other enemies in the other games, like Krako, Camelio Arm, Twin Woods, Heavy Lobster, and Computer Virus. I mean, they appeared in Revenge of Meta Knight, so how could they be here if they were dead? I mean, you can chalk it up to continuity, but it's kind of weird to say that. I mean, it's game modes. I understand it can be a little bit confusing, but it's still something to consider.
If Kirby actually cared about the creatures he was helping, but he doesn't. In one game, he's fighting against DDD for stealing all the food in Dreamland because the people suddenly don't have enough, but then in the next, he is literally racing DDD, consuming as much as possible.
You mean the gourmet race? The thing that's being set up and has limited amounts of food, and has Dreamlanders actively participating in it, and has signs showing that there's some active planning in it? I mean, they aren't stealing the food from them, you can watch it in the gameplay!
In Dynablade, a giant bird is out there damaging all the crops of Dreamland. But is that why Kirby takes on the mission? No, it's because Dynablade flies past and caused Kirby to get knocked on the head with an apple, ruining his nap and prompting a quest for bloody revenge.
Oh, and cutting down trees and hills.
Kirby fights to protect the crops, beats up Dynablade, once again asks questions later, only to find out that she had kids that she was protecting, which in turn explains all the crop business.
No it doesn't, Matt. Her stealing crops doesn't have anything to do with protecting her young. Now, play the pedantic word game all you want and say that she was making sure to feed them, sure, but she was still stealing food, something you just got done condemning Kirby for! Even then, there was no clear way for Kirby to have learned the whole story. In the battle against Dynablade, Dynablade swoops down from the background and starts the battle. Kirby didn't learn the story because Dynablade didn't let him. Dynablade starts the conflict, not Kirby.
A beat down to a mother who is protecting her kids. Something that could have very easily been avoided if Kirby hadn't run in guns blazing. And again, if you think all of this is a stretch, then I'm reading too much into these details. I'm not. The games at this point recognize the dangerous impulsiveness of Kirby, how it can be used for good, but also that it can be used as a weapon for evil. In fact, Kirby is descended from a line of evil creatures, a fact that the games are starting to make more and more explicit. So I ask again, what is the true nature of Kirby? He is a chaotic, neutral god reincarnated into multiple generations with the sole purpose of destruction. But that part is a whole separate discussion for next week.
I guess FNAF's more important, huh? Also, if he was chaotic neutral, then why the hell are you only focusing on the negatives of Kirby? Like, take for example, again, Dynablade. We're never explicitly told that Kirby's motive, so it may have been to save the crops. I can't say that conclusively, but we see Kirby find the chicks at the other side of the summit, so it's likely that Kirby didn't see them, and was more focused on Dynablade herself, who, again, started the conflict. We see Kirby take care of the chicks before Dynablade recovers and takes them away, showing his kind nature. Oh, and don't think I didn't catch you change the title of the video again. No wonder part 2 is off the rails. At this point, it's not even fun anymore. If anyone's wondering, no, I'm not going to cover part 2 if it ever comes out. I'll point you in the direction of those who actually care. I had some Let's Drop footage that I've had up my sleeve for a while, and I thought to myself, you know what, let's talk about game theory and explain a few things about the 6 or so videos that I have on my channel about it. This probably won't be my most funny video, but it's rather to give you guys a bit of insight as to why I respond to game theory. Initially, I had no interest in responding to game theory at all. I was content with making my own videos on MLP, doing a couple commentaries, and some simple animations. And I was still working on a few other things at the time, and I still am right now. However, when I posted a commentary called Being Popular is Overrated, the guy I was covering made a backhanded comment about how Mario was a psychopath. You don't need to be a genius or have a degree in logic to figure out that the guy was referencing MatPat and his Mario is mental theory. So I had left a text response to the guy in my own video, basically saying that I thought it was a bad theory. Little did I know that was all it took. I had gotten several messages and comments after the video came out asking me why I thought the theory was bad and asking for a video on the matter. Now, I know I was new to the commentary scene, but even then I knew a video that was almost over 2 years old was a really bad idea to do since there's a chance that MatPat wouldn't be believing in his own theory and that there would be several other people making videos on the matter. Boy, was I wrong on that! I had seen a lot of times that MatPat pushes the Mario as mental theory. Heck, every time he talks about Mario's series in general, he usually brings it up. And in more recent time, he actually did bring it up in his Luigi theory. So, I made the video, and from what I can understand, it's a home run hit. I'm not going to pretend it was perfect, nothing ever is, but I wanted to do my best, and I think it came out pretty well. And then one thing led to another, and I found problems with his other videos that I wanted to talk about. But let's get on to the actual thoughts on game theory as a whole. Despite how popular the show is, and I will admit for the most part the presentation of the show was done well, there are a number of times where game theory and MatPat will shoot themselves in the foot, either with scripting or with their visuals. Now, I wouldn't bring this up, except it's not a rare occurrence in the series, to the point where if you go on Game Theory's TV tropes page, it lists a lot of the critical failures of game theory. Granted, it's not all of them, but there are a lot, and I'll provide a link in the description so you guys can see it. While the video would drag out if I listed everything on the page, I just want to list a few of the more interesting points. For example... Yeah, I don't know who was editing that theory, but what the hell? Tackling a video that I haven't covered, let's talk about his Smite video, where he calls Kali a sexual goddess. As someone who enjoys reading up on mythology and other cultures, I can tell you that Kali is not a sexual goddess. She's a goddess of death. And it's normal for deities in Hindu culture to be topless. Or how about his Leave PewDiePie Alone video, where MatPat falls into an obvious trap of statistics, where one of the polls he uses states that 86% of the people who contributed didn't even watch television and only use the internet for their entertainment. The only thing that MatPat doesn't say that he does this with his own audience. Basically, people who watch game theory and don't usually watch television at all. The stats issue also comes up in other videos, one such being his 2 dating videos, using dating site statistics to prove his points. Even though he doesn't provide links to said statistics, and the statistics could be inflated by dating companies in order to sell their services and such. That's not really beyond the realm of possibility. There's a lot of things that game theory fails when it comes to doing research, and I'm sorry, but when you have a secondary title of Smartest Show in Gaming, even if it's just a tagline or just a catchphrase, it still holds weight. And I expect some actual intelligence from the show. This leads to my actual next point. This is a common trend I see not on just Game Theory's channel, but on a ton of other videos on YouTube. Not citing your sources. And in fact, in lieu of actually providing the sources, they only promote themselves in said description. I don't even understand this one. It's not even hard to do. From game theory to some commentators to members who are in the Brony community, it's like there's a character limit in the description. You can do self-promotion and list your sources at the same time, especially when there are times when MatPat uses questionable or materials that don't even hold any water. Want examples? How about we go back to Mario's Mental, where MatPat talked about timelines. What he won't tell you is that they are created by fans. You know, timelines that don't have actually water in the franchise and haven't been endorsed by Nintendo.
and thus shouldn't be used in the theory at all. Or how about his Dead or Alive episode saying that women have a slower reaction speed than men because decades of studies say so, without even providing a single source on the matter. And there are a lot of other studies that he doesn't link to. But in that same video, MatPat says something that's even worse.
What about female DOA players? Wait, do those exist?
Even though if you actually took 2 minutes to look online, some of the more top professional players who do play DOA 4 are female. I'm not going to say that this is sexism, but damn sure shows whoever was in charge of this script didn't know what the hell they were doing. I've talked about it before, but it bears repeating. The amount of cherry picking is an amazing feat in this show. And instead of being repetitious here and using examples of what I've already shown, let's talk about the time he did a crossover of Peanut Butter Gamer. And by the way, Ryan, if you are watching this, you can't tear this portion apart, as I've got facts on this matter. So shut up! There's been a real good video that covers this, which I'll link in the description, that talks about all the inconsistencies with that theory. But one of the consistencies I want to talk about is how the two talk about Hyrule Historia, where they use information from it to prove their theory, even though if you look in the same material, it proves them wrong. For example, when they talk how Link would get lost in the woods, that he would become a Stalfos. Their claim, not mine, even though if you read the book, you can only become a Stalfos if you're an adult, and during Majora's Mask, Link is a kid! And thus, if he did get lost, he turned to a Skull Kid. This is all in Hyrule Historia, my friends. Or a bigger issue is how they say that the hero Shade is created by Link becoming a Stalfos. Even though the hero Shade is an ancestor of Twilight Princess Link, and thus if Link actually died in Majora's Mask, he would have died as a child. And don't give me any of that squeaky stuff, please. Ugh. Not going to go too much into this since I've already talked to death about this subject in my other videos covering MatPat's content. There's nothing wrong with thinking highly of yourself. Kudos for you if you can look yourself in the mirror and say, "You're awesome today!" There's nothing wrong with that, in short strides. That's not the case with MatPat in Game Theory, or even his other channel, Film Theory. He'll take whatever opportunity he can to put himself on a pedestal. Some say this is entertainment and comedy, but if it is, then the joke's run its course in my case. And just a little disclaimer for those who don't know, humor is subjective. Even if you find it funny, I don't. And I don't need several comments trying to convince me otherwise, even when sometimes I don't talk about his comedy and oftentimes skip it in my videos. The only time I actually bring up his comedy is when he actually makes it repetitious and it doesn't really add, or it detracts from the actual video. I'm a pretty open guy when it comes to comedy and such, and it takes a lot to detract me from a certain joke or comedy style. So congrats, MatPat, your ego has effectively done that! What do I mean by ego? Let's take a look at MatPat thinking he knows more than the actual creators of the games he covers sometimes. Now, I fully admit this could be due to whoever writes the scripts, but he has displayed an attitude before, such as when he said he knew more than Scott Kaufman in his Five Nights at Freddy's 4 video, or completely disregarding the Legend of Zelda timeline. Even if that timeline is confusing, it's still endorsed by Nintendo, and thus has more weight than any fan-created timeline. There's also being BFFs with George Clooney, or him talking about interviewing Miyamoto, and several other times, and like I said, if it was a rare occurrence, then this wouldn't be an issue. But nowadays, it's practically almost every other video. You can say I'm being hyperbolic, but that doesn't change the fact that MatPat will keep putting himself on a higher and higher on our pedestals every time. It's the inflated self-importance that gets to me. All in all, I don't hate MatPat, I don't hate game theory. I just expect actual quality work from a channel that has over 6 million subs, has a team to actually help out with research, editing, and scripting, and doesn't come off as being over pretentious. You can say my expectations are high, but then again, like I said, 6 million subs and smartest show in gaming. That holds some weight. I could talk about how his videos are becoming more clickbaity, how there's a ton more fluff in his videos that don't really add to his theories, or how his theories are anything but a sign of being the smartest show in gaming. But if I did, then this video would probably go on a lot longer than I would like it to be. But seriously, I do not care. The only reason why I actually do respond to game theory is because I love a good debate. I love discussion. I will not insult MatPat, and I will apologize if I have in the past. But at the same time, I do not need people telling me, "Oh, it's just a theory, you shouldn't take it serious." It's the internet. People can make whatever the hell they want.
If MatPat can make a video talking about how Phoenix Wright is a criminal, I have all the rights to say that he isn't and provide evidence on why MatPat's theory is wrong. Whether you like my videos or not, that's not the problem. The problem is that I am allowed to make them. If MatPat can make his videos, then why can't I make my responses? That being said, I will not be covering game theory for a while because I want to tackle some other things and get my channel growing. I do appreciate everyone who has subbed to me, and if you are watching this video, I hope you stick with me for a little bit longer. I will be doing more commentaries, and I will be working on new videos as well. Thank you for your time, and I hope you all have an enjoyable day. Thanks for watching, and remember to examine your fandom.
Hello, Internet. Welcome to Game Theory, the show that's got you covered if you're ever taking a class in genetics, physics, or robotics, especially haunted robotics.
Hello and welcome to the last 2 months of the year. We've had quite a wild ride on this channel. We managed to hit quite a few milestones, and I finally managed to get called the Leafy clone. Quite the accomplishments in my opinion, but what really got me rolling are the rebuttal videos that I made on MatPat, and the game theorists in whole. So I think it's time that I turn to form and actually give you guys something a little bit different. When it comes to theories on videos, there are a number of things one needs to consider. The game's lore, the characters, the information that's presented in the dialogue and in-game actions, and you also need to take into account a lot of research and reform your craft, and make sure your logic is sound. So let's take a look at the top 7 worst of game theories videos that don't really follow this, okay? Now let me start by saying a few things. 1. I won't be doing a full debunking of the theories themselves. I will bring up some points on why the theory is wrong in my eyes, but if I did a full debunking of all 7 videos, I'd be here for hours on end, and no thank you. I will only be doing the theorists from the Game Theory channel. Don't get me wrong, I have issues with film theory as well, but we're just focusing on the one channel. Number 3, while I have covered a few of the videos from the Game Theorists before, which you can watch here, I promise you this entire list won't be consisting of just those theories that I've covered. I won't promise that some of them won't appear on this list, but when they do, I'll try to bring some new information to the table that I didn't instead of just regurgitating the same points. A lot of these new points are actually brought to my attention by my very informative subscribers and people who actually left comments. Well, for the most part. There are a few things determining how I ranked these videos. 1. The evidence that's used. 2. The material that the episode is being covered. And 3. My preferences on the game. And 5. Since this seems to be mandatory, yet no matter how many times I say it, I don't hate MatPat, I'm not jealous of the game theorists, and if anyone brings that sort of thing up as a means to deflect any criticism of MatPat and his channels, then I refuse to take you serious since you're not willing to actually bring any actual evidence and make the presumption of my, and let me repeat myself on that, my mindset and opinions. Last time I checked, you guys aren't in my head and you're trained to be Mentalk the Mind Taker is a scam. But hey, this is a countdown. A game... Oh god, that actually hurt! I have a confession for you all. I'm not the biggest Mario fan. Now hold on a second, I do like the games, but I'm not the biggest fan of the franchise. That being said, I did grow up with the series, playing at my grandmother's house every Sunday evening and fighting over the controller with my cousins. Ah, good times. Very good times. So, number 7 on this list is the Mario is Mental videos.
Hello, Internet. Welcome to Game Theory, where we put the O in Super Mario.
Brilliant! Brilliant!
Sorry, Super Mario? More like super villain.
This is a rather infamous theory that people still talk about to this very day. Why? Because MatPat puts this theory up on his damn magnum opus, and whenever he comes back to the Mario franchise, he can't help but bring it back up. Stop rubbing salt in the wound! But what's wrong with this video? Well, it could be its consistency and ability actually to double check his work, the fact that MatPat relied on fan-made timelines to support his Mario as a womanizer points, and using subjectivity, thinking that Mario Power Tennis is canon and grinding that someone's shoe is akin to abuse of a family member, and even the fact that when MatPat actually made his timeline video, and from rewatching the video, proved that Mario and Jumpman were not the same person, yet MatPat treats them just as that. So these 2 videos are a mess.
Pure and simple.
Mario is a murderer. Murderer.
Do the Mario swing your arms.
The FNAF mystery solved. Although I am not the biggest fan of the FNAF series... Hey Joshy, come get a bite! 'Cause I'm surviving 5 nights! You see nothing? Even though I'm not the biggest fan of the series, and I do have my own issues with it, I can still appreciate it and have followed it through Let's Plays, reading the story, and many other things. Frankly, the only reason why I don't play them anymore is due to the repetitive nature of the games. I'm more for the lore of the games. And I will admit Sister Location did change that up with the gameplay and got rid of the repetitive nature though. And I will admit MatPat does bring up some convincing evidence, and that recently MatPat made a video about the recent game saying that he took real care and all that jazz. However, just to be fair, Part 2 is the worst of all Game Theory's FNAF theories.
Let me run you through the evidence real quick so that we're all on the same page.
For those not in the know, and spoilers of the theory, MatPat says that the purple guy's identity is Phone Guy. Now, a little disclaimer, this list was written before MatPat's latest video on the FNAF series, so I have to say I'm just looking at the video before this information came out should there be any updates to it. The theory has a few things similar with that of the Mario Mental series, such as inconsistencies, like saying that the first part of the video he claims Purple Guy's sprite is holding a device to deactivate the animatronics, even saying that it isn't a phone, yet in the second part he calls it a phone. MatPat, please be consistent with your scripts, you're starting to make my head spin. He ignores the fact that the first recording of FNAF 1 referred to the bite of 87, which is something that couldn't have happened if Purple Guy's death was indeed before the second game, and his theory that every message that was recorded before the second game is kind of bunk, since Night 6 implies that Phone Guy talks about the incidents that just recently happened. Granted, like I said in his more recent FNAF videos, there's a chance that to really explain this stuff, but I'm treating the episodes and theories on their own merit. Unless a theory is proven to be true, then it can't be used as the basis for another theory in my eyes.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh, what happened? What's wrong?
Look!
Oh no.
The Metroid Morph Ball episode.
In fact, get out of your chair and crouch into a ball right now. Seriously, I'll wait. And I'll laugh at you, 'cause you look so dumb. So dumb.
I've had some fun with the Metroid games in my time, but please don't look to me as an encyclopedia of the game series. However, I am familiar with a lot of its titles. And frankly, the Game Theory episode just stunk. Why? Well, like with the FNAF theory and the Mario theory, there's a lot of pick and choosing going on. And frankly, the only reason why this one is higher than FNAF is because how much I like Metroid more than FNAF. What, it's petty, but it's still a reason why it's higher. Let's start with the fact MatPat completely ignores the 3D games. Look, I know the track record for those games isn't really known as the greatest.
The baby, and the baby, with the baby, of the baby, with the baby. Babies cry, the babies cry.
But they still overturned MatPat's theory since we've seen that Samus actually turns into the Morph Ball and is not just curling up. That right there shoots the theory in the foot, and once again shows that MatPat likes to pick and choose what information he wants to use. I am tired of people trying to say that's my favorite word. I would also like to point out that the episode doesn't really take into account other positives of the Morph Ball. The minimization of Samus in every direction, just not vertically. It can actually increase her mobility and navigation of smaller areas. But the video only focuses on reducing Samus's vertical height. And one of the worst things I hate about the game theory is highlighted here.
But here is where video game history comes into play. You see, the Morph Ball is the result of bad programming. Back in the early days of the NES, the programmers and designers couldn't handle animating Samus getting on her knees and crawling on all fours to get through the nooks and crannies of alien planets. So they chose something that was easier to animate and easier to code, turning Samus into a spinning yellow ball. And thus, one of gaming's most ridiculous power-ups in gaming history was born. But now that they can animate all of this, the Morph Ball is a relic of the past. An ability that logically has no reason to exist, and only does so because of tradition.
Citation needed. 'Cause you can't just say that, MatPat boy. How about you actually tell us where you pulled that from instead of trying to blame the developers?
It's moments like that where I have to stop and question the choices I'm making with my life.
Link is dead.
Wheel of Gaming, turn, turn, turn. Tell me the fan base I should burn. Oh, jeez.
Oh boy, if there's one thing you've noticed so far in the previous entries, one of my biggest ticks is the fact that MatPat will often ignore information that is blatantly right in front of him just to prove his theory. I do not have a good track record when it comes to Peanut Butter Gamer and MatPat, or at least when they're combined. But this theory is still full of holes. Heck, if this video wasn't that old, I would make a full response to it. But here are some of the faults from the video.
Really? I asked the question, where is this place supposed to be located?
Underground?
Then how was there a sky?
The official game guide states that Link travels through a portal that will lead him to a new world. This is backed up by Hyrule Historia, which mentions that there's a connection between Hyrule and Termina. Even then, there are times in the Legend of Zelda games where Link travels between worlds. Heck, Twilight Princess did that, there's also Hyrule and Lorule, and Subrosia. There are a number of times where Link has traveled between worlds via magic, and there's no reason to think that this isn't the same case. There's also the Elegy of Emptiness segment.
The Elegy of Emptiness. It's a song you get late in the game that allows you to create statue clones of your current form. In a lot of ways, they're like funeral effigies, standing there as a memorial to the dead. Now, if the only masks that allow you to create a clone using this song are the ones that are related to dead people, and Link is somehow able to create a clone of himself, that would seem to mean...
That would mean Link is alive. Hooray! And you can determine this by looking at the transformation statues. They all have dead eyes, save for the Link statue, which you can clearly see has pupils. Speaking of late in the game, you come across a character who actually has a ghost radar, and it's roughly around the same time you get this song, The Elegy of Emptiness. Whenever you talk to this character, he has a ghost radar, and it goes off when you're ever in your Dinku, Goron, or Zorn masked forms. Yet when you talk to him as Link, his radar doesn't go off and he comments on the fairy. And even then, with the masks on, he says, "You're like a ghost, but you're not," which strongly implies that Link is alive. And we know that the ghosts of those masks are a thing. Heck, we talked to the ghosts of the Goron. So yeah. I mentioned earlier Hyrule Historia, and this comes to the biggest fault of their video. Even though the two actually bring up Hyrule Historia to bring up their reasoning why Link died in Majora's Mask and became the hero Shade in Twilight Princess through the process of becoming a Stalfos, there is information in the very same Historia that they blatantly ignore. Since Link has become lost, or died in Majora's Mask, he would have become a Skull Kid since he's a child during the game. And to answer our question of the Hero Shade, we can see that the Hero Shade also in Hyrule Historia is being called a ghost. There's a lot more I could go into, but there was actually a couple of other videos, and one in particular that I brought up in my rant video made by a user called by The One, who actually goes into a lot more depth and whose footage I've been using in this video. He did a really good job on his counter-arguments, and I recommend his video if you want to check out the points made against this theory. Link in description. Link in description. Oh god, a pun! Ugh!
Say that again?
Well, it's just a theory.
Oh, a game!
Oh, slow down there, peanut butter jelly time. Let's not jump the gun here. Reggie's body may have been ready, but his pocketbook certainly wasn't.
Wii U is the new Virtual Boy. Man, there's a lot of Nintendo in this one. This video had a whole lot of controversy about it, with several people coming out and actually bringing up ways MatPat misinterpreted the game system. Unlike a lot of other segments on this list, MatPat, instead of pick and choosing the facts, he decided to make things up to build his case. Let's take, for example, bringing up the battery life of the gamepad, which is an argument that baffles me since you can easily just plug the gamepad in and play it while it charges. Another is him adding onto the cost of the Wii U, the battery pack, the Wii controller, and a game. Even though, looking at the numbers and prices of the consoles at the time and even in his own video, the Wii U would still be cheaper with all that than the Xbox One and the PS4. In addition, the added costs don't make any sense. The battery is optional since, like I just got done saying, you can play while charging. The Wii controller? Well, this won't be the case for every customer of the Wii U. Those who did have a Wii will most likely have plenty of controllers to work with. And the game? There are two things here. One, No duh, you have to buy a game. That applies to every single way of gaming. PC gaming, make yourself a PC and buy digital games. Buy a console, buy a game. That's like complaining that you don't get free Pop-Tarts when you buy a damn toaster. Curse you, Pop-Tarts! And 2, there are special combinations of the Wii U that came with the game. There's also the comparison to the Virtual Boy. Oh yeah, this damn thing. As someone who actually owned this thing as a kid and got to experience it, there are a ton of reasons why comparing it with the Wii U is just stupid. Hell, anyone who's ever watched the Angry Video Game Nerd's review of the Virtual Boy knows these complaints. The damn thing was hard to use, the red light would hurt your eyes, the stand was weak, and it was marketed as a portable system even though that would be insanely dangerous to do so. In addition, while the Wii U lasted for a few years, the Virtual Boy died in its first year. But what really got me was MatPat kept saying that he's a huge Nintendo fanboy. You know, I'm having a really hard time buying that one, Matty Pat. Since when you're making up reasons why the Wii U is essentially the Virtual Boy and how you love to demonize the Nintendo characters, it just makes me want to crave for some aspirin.
What? Excuse me? You were worried about crappy games and yet Waterworld got your seal of approval?
Let me be honest here. The previous 5 entries were theories that irked me, but otherwise, they didn't really make me rage when I saw them. These last 2?
Who is Sans? Well, what if we took it one final step and said that Sans happened to be Ness from Earthbound?
Number 2. No! Sans is Ness. If you've been on my channel for a while, you know about my video MatPat's UnderFail. It's practically one of my most popular videos, which is rather sad upon retrospect. But whatever, this theory is one of the worst I've ever seen. And it all starts with a little leap of logic. Assuming that the badge you find in Sans' office is the Franklin badge, even though there's no evidence of that. Hold up, I'm getting ahead of myself. If you don't know the theory, MatPat declares that Undertale is an unofficial sequel to Mother 3, and he makes that claim based on Ness becoming Sans. There's a lot of bull going on in this theory, and I'll have an annotation on the screen so you can watch my points in the theory, since I don't like to regurgitate them. There are so many reaches of logic that it makes me question if MatPat has even played Undertale before he made the theory, such as...
He wears a custom-made costume known as his battle body, but if you look really closely at the design of the armor, you'll notice some markings on the chest. Is it just a throwaway detail? Oh no! That right there is an exact match to the ones that appear on the chests of Starman, the most iconic enemy of Earthbound.
Something's not right here.
Even though in the game, Sans tells you that the armor was made for a party not too long ago. And the fact that a Starman, you know, one of the major enemies of the game, agents of Gygas and all that, why would one of them join up with Sans? Why would one of them join up with Ness? And you know what's the real kicker? If you read the description of the player's guide about Starmen, it's heavily suggested that they're robots, or at the very least robotically enhanced aliens. So why would they have human skeletons? The fact that he refers to the underground as Underworld, and what's worse, he still thinks he's right on this theory, even though a lot of people have said it's a horrible theory.
Hello, Internet! Welcome to Game Theory, where first of all, let's just set the record straight. I liked the Sans' Ness episode a lot. That's the one where Game Theory jumped the shark. No, it isn't! No, it isn't! Whether or not you agree with the conclusion, you have to admit, there's a lot of evidence there that just lines up really nicely. Just saying.
Oh, wait, you serious? Let me laugh even harder.
It makes me question if MatPat can even read his own scripts. But this theory, oh yeah, it's terrible. But it's not the worst for me.
Now go forth with that knowledge and try to tell me who Gaster is. Don't worry, I'll be looking too.
With science, of course!
And so, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I seek to prove that the true criminal, the most corrupt force in the Phoenix Wright series is Phoenix Wright himself.
Objection! Ah, come on, you all should have seen this coming. Phoenix Wright is a criminal theory. As I stated in my commentary on this video, as a fan of the series with a good portion of 2 decades, this has got to be one of, if not the worst theory that game theory has ever made, in my opinion. There are a lot of things wrong with this theory, like shooting this theory in the foot by focusing on American law, even though later in the video, Phoenix Wright's legal system takes more from the Japanese system. And MatPat says it himself! And then still continues to ignore the Japanese legal system.
We hope you've enjoyed No Moral Theater.
And one of, if not the worst thing about this theory, is MatPat is only focusing on the first game, and not even finishing the first game either. How can I make this claim? Well, let's consider the fact that when it comes to evidence in Phoenix Wright's universe, the first game's bonus case, which is canon by the way since we have Emma in it, gives us 2 rules about evidence law that go against the majority of what MatPat brings to the table. For those who don't know what evidence law is in Phoenix Wright, here are the 2 rules. No evidence shall be shown without approval of the police department. Unregistered evidence presented must be relevant to the case in the trial. That second one blows up a lot of MatPat's theory, so either he didn't touch Case 5, or he's outright hiding evidence from his audience, effectively lying to them. Either way, he's being dishonest, which is one of the worst things you can do when presenting a case. But what's really sad is that there's actually a case to bring up about how Phoenix has broken the law in other games. Justice for All and Apollo Justice would have been much better games to focus on, with Phoenix doing questionable things that could be considered illegal, even in the Phoenix Wright world. And while I did say I would try to refrain from repeating myself, I have to do so here, since what really makes this theory go off kilter for me, and is the most damning piece of the theory in MatPat claiming Phoenix Wright is a criminal, is that MatPat says that Phoenix Wright hid the receipt that pointed to Maya as the culprit, even though his own damn footage shows that Gumshoe said he found the receipt next to the body. Bloody murder! Is it any wonder why I don't like this theory? It's one of the worst and one of the laziest videos I've seen.
Case closed. Yeah, what's up? Yeah, I'll tell him. He says that I can't offer any of this as statement of fact, but should instead let people know that it's a theory. For once, I think we agree.
Not a joke, but an incredible simulation.
Now, don't take this to mean that I want you all to disavow MatPat. That's not the point of the video. The point of the video was to point out what I think were some of the weakest, dumbest, and outright worst theories that MatPat has ever put on his channel. Yeah, he has had some good stuff in a few years back, but nowadays, he's more miss than hit. For a trek like me who's got 2 of his videos being used as evidence of game theory's critical research fails on TV Tropes page, then yeah, that says a lot. Look, whether MatPat can improve in the future, only time will tell. And if I'm being honest, I do want to see MatPat coming up with great theories. He did manage to build up a really good channel, but it needs to be kept up to the polish that he used to get there. I get I'm probably a minority when it comes to this, but when it comes to making theories, there's a difference between actually putting intelligence and pulling stuff out of your ass. But hey, that's an opinion, a skull opinion. Thanks for watching. I think I'll go wash my tongue now.
Nintendo confirmed that Mario is punching Yoshi in the head. According to character designer for Super Mario World, Shigefumi Hino, quote, "Lots of people think that while Mario is pointing his finger forward, he's saying go, and Yoshi's tongue comes out. However, the setup that I drew was that when Mario punches Yoshi in the head, the character's tongue shoots out in surprise. What's more, there's an added box sound." End quote. Man, between this and Scott confirming last week's FNAF theory, these are good days to be a theorist.
MatPat, why?
Not the hater! Ah, the hater!
There it is. There was the scream.
Alright, so let me get this out of the way immediately. Yes, I've seen MatPat respond to my top 7 video on his content. And frankly...
Thank you. No, now it probably makes more sense now. Wait, is he saying my Mario is sociopath?
No, that's a great one.
What's that sandwich? Prove them wrong. Okay.
Later, in Miniland Mayhem, she even gets her own toy modeled after her. There's no Peach toy. Theme park based around his hit toy line. There's no Peach toy. Screw you, continuity! scene of the game. Oh, Daisy, Daisy, he cries out when seeing her. Now, I'm sorry, but that's not how a friend greets another friend. Names only get repeated in romantic settings.
No, that's a great one.
Liar! Gee, it's almost like you're trying to ignore context and... Oh...
For generations to come.
What more can we do?
Thank you, MatPat, for labeling me as a hater for no good reason.
Not the hater!
There it is, there was the scream.
This, combined with the fact that we now know publicly that you actually actively ignore evidence that goes against your theories instead of debunking it, this just makes it all the more sweeter for me. But we're not talking about MatPat in this video. We're talking about the apparent confirmation of Mario being a sociopath. So if you have an actual life, and you don't spend your time chilling with the dusty old fossils of yesteryear, in September a slew of articles came out with an interview about Shigefumi Hino talking about Mario as he was intended to actually hit Yoshi. There's a link to one of these articles, and I suggest you read a few of these things to make sure that I don't take anything out of context.
Lots of people think that while Mario is pointing his finger forward in saying go, and Yoshi's tongue comes out, said Hino. However, the setup that I drew was that when the Mario punches Yoshi in the head, the character's tongue shoots out in surprise. What's more, Hino continued, there is an added bop sound. However, it seemed like people would say poor Yoshi, so that's why it became that Mario was saying go. This explains why the official line is that Mario was telling Yoshi to go or go get something, but the original art shows Mario smacking the character in the head.
First of all, I'd like to point out that none of the articles are showing any official artwork of Mario hitting Yoshi. Secondly, people are taking this to mean that Mario is a sociopath.
More, there's an added bop sound. End quote.
Do you people not know how to read? Intentions are all well and good, but unless that was in the final product, that doesn't mean jack. I could intend on breaking my computer right here and now, but that doesn't mean my computer is broken now. Even then, this information goes against the initial imagery that were shown in the player's manual and in the games for Super Mario World. They intended that to happen, but that's not what actually happened. He says it was changed in production. People are misreading this information as Mario was actually punching Yoshi, when in actuality it's saying was intended to punch Yoshi. There's a clear difference. It utterly baffles me how people are taking this and using it as a means to denounce Mario and paint him as a sociopath. People, stop reading too much into these things and read! There. Done. 3 pages of my life down the drain. Hope you people are happy.